All right, welcome to Defending Genesis 2023. I am your host for session 9, excuse me, of this important conference. And what a session this will be, as I have the undefeated champ, the debate champ, I'll say himself, Dr. Dino, to refute some evolutionism. Who better to have on to refute evolution than the man who has debated the topic over 320 times, if I'm not mistaken. So, Kent, how you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, doing great. I'm up to 337 now, brother. I got to stay ahead of you. Yeah, I'm doing great. God's good, but some of his kids are driving me nuts, but God is good.
Right. Now, debating, it's addicting, isn't it? Debating these evolutionists.
My whole ministry started with a debate actually in the Pensacola News Journal. I just moved there in January of '89, and the neighbor kid was throwing the newspaper for a job, and he asked if I wanted to take the paper. I said, no, I don't have a parakeet, but he kept throwing them in the yard if he had an extra, and I opened one up, and it said dinosaur bones from Montana were found at 80 million years old or something. So I wrote my first ever letter to the editor in Pensacola News Journal, and somebody responded, and I said, this is stupid. The dinosaur bones are from the flood of the days of Noah. And the atheists started writing in, and I wrote, there's a debate in the newspaper. And then they asked me to come debate at the University of West Florida. They said, would you come debate one of our anthropology professors? I said, man, I've never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lose those every time. But sure. So I did my first ever debate early 1989, and that led to this whole ministry on creation evolution.
One of your debates that changed my life was your 3-on-1 debate. And a single clip from that debate went viral. Millions of views, if I'm not mistaken. The question was, where did God come from?
Somebody told me that they went through all the sites they could find on Twitter and Facebook and said there's over 900 million views on that 2-minute answer. Where did God come from?
That's a lot of fruit produced, brother. You're doing excellent work. We're going to get you to, the goal is to get you to 400 debates in 2024. And I think we could do it because in 2022, you did about 60 to 65. So we know it's doable. Okay, so let's do it. Okay, so to the audience, what we're doing tonight, this is, again, session 9. We've got one more session tomorrow to complete our Defending Genesis conference. The title for tonight is Refuting Evolution and Lies in the Textbooks. And so Kent is going to give us about a 30-minute presentation on the topic. And since we're doing this live, if you do have any questions, just make sure you're tagging me. Once Kent's done with his presentation, I'm going to ask him a series of my own questions that I think are important for this topic. And then I'll open up the mic for a little bit. We'll allow anybody to join as long as they're willing to be professional, as long as they will stick to a topic at a time. And we'll allow you to engage Kent with some questions and maybe some impromptu debate if you have a line of evidence that you think demonstrates whales and strawberries are related through common ancestry. So, okay, with that, Kent, we're just going to hand it right over to you, brother. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, brother. It's an honor to be on your program again, Donny. I like to tell people where I stand right up front. I got nothing to hide or be ashamed of. I believe the Bible is the infallible, inspired, inerrant word of the living God. God said he made everything in 6 days. Everything. Dinosaurs, everything. Made in 6 literal 24-hour days about 6,000 years ago. I believe that. I've been an old-fashioned independent fundamental Baptist preacher for almost 50 years now, coming up this May. Got God ordained, 1974. And so we're straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles, in the little bitty town of Lenox, Alabama, where we think God ought to get the glory for his creation instead of the stupid evolution religion. Come on down, pay us a visit. Told you, Donnie, it's a little chilly today. It's 71. I would like it like 74. It's a little better, but come on down, you Canadians. We'd love to have you down here. We think God should get the glory for his creation. Let's see. I wanted to get to something else. Oh, today, by the way, Rosa Parks is the anniversary. I don't know if Canadians worry about that, but she refused to give up her seat on a bus. And that started the movement to get equal rights for black people. Amen. Congratulations, Rosa. The anniversary. Now they're trying to make it a federal holiday. Just what the feds need, another day off work. But so I believe in teaching what the Bible says. God made everything. But the textbooks in schools say all the life forms go back to a common ancestor. This family tree is not science. This is propaganda. This is garbage. Nobody's ever seen a strawberry produce a non-strawberry. This is all pure baloney. But if you're going to talk about this evolution theory, you have to define what you're talking about. There is absolutely no evidence for this chart, none. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow or a dog produce a non-dog, but they've got a cow and a butterfly connected to a common ancestor. This is not only not science, it's stupid. Anybody that would believe this needs their head examined. People say, well, that's what they teach in accredited schools. Well, then don't go there. They're going to teach you something that dumb. I got my chart of what the different professors think they're related to. Professor Dave thinks he's a strawberry, or related to a strawberry. Oh, yeah. Who's the one the other day said they're related to a potato? And all of them are related to a potato. Yeah, I should have thought about that. Okay. Anyway, we got a ton of stuff to go over here, Donnie. The Bible says very clearly, God made everything in 6 days. Everything. That means dinosaurs lived with man. They had to. They did not live millions of years ago. I was going to get to, let's see, was it 55? I'm not against science, okay? I'm not against teaching. My mother and my brother both retired from public school teaching. My dad and my other brother were engineers. Dad was electrical engineer. Brother Mark became mechanical engineer out in Seattle, Washington area. We're not against science. We're not against teaching. I'm not against schools. I'm just against lies being in the textbook. If you knew some maniac was going to deliver poisoned milk to your child's school in the morning, what would you do? Wouldn't you do just about anything to stop them? Don't bring that poisoned milk into our school. Come on, what's the matter with you? Sure, you try to stop them. Well, the poison's already been delivered and the kids are already drinking it every day. It's in the textbooks. I have a huge collection of public school textbooks, mostly biology and earth science, because that's where most of the propaganda is. We're not against science. We like science. But there are some lies in the science textbooks. God said very clearly, thou shalt not bear false witness. Don't lie. He said, evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. At the end of time, it was predicted in 2 Timothy that the liars would be becoming more and more abundant. And boy, it's happened, okay? 6 things God hates: a false witness that speaketh lies. False witness shall not be unpunished. He that speaketh lies shall not escape. They want to cast God down from his excellency. That's what this stupid evolution religion is all about. It started with the devil. He's a liar, and he's the father of it. So I like science, and we have a science center here, 12,000 square feet of cool stuff on science in the Bible. We give tours of our property, 140 acres on the Jeep or the four-wheeler, or the side-by-side. We like science, not against science. I started off, let's see, this is Northern Michigan University back, a long time ago, almost 20 years ago. Evolution, creationism, concepts discussed. Wait. Why did they put the ism on creation? It should be evolutionism. See, it's like communism, Nazism, evolutionism. Yeah, they're all isms, okay? But they said right here, Kent Hovind's going to come speak. Let's see. It's a big issue in American society, said Neil Cumberledge, the head of biology department. Anyone has a right to say what they think. Oh, really? Well, good. I'm going to do that tonight, Neil. And Northern's a place where you can do that. Okay, why don't you invite me back to Northern Michigan University? I'll come debate all your professors at the same time. Anybody go to Northern Michigan? Say, Hovind challenges the whole biology department and the anthropology department. All of you. Take you all on same time. If I get half the time, you guys go first, present the best evidence for evolution. I go second, equal time, no interrupting. Take you all on same time, or any university, okay? He said, but you're not free to pass off falsehoods. Well, then, Neil, why do you pass off falsehoods in your biology class every day? You're saying there's evidence for evolution. It says all biology majors at Northern Michigan are required to take biology 315, evolution, as part of their core studies. Well, there's the problem. It's an indoctrination center. Cumberledge said evolution is a fundamental theory that makes sense of many other biology concepts. Well, you're either lying or stupid. I'm sorry. Doesn't make sense of anything. These textbooks are loaded with just plain lies. Now, it doesn't mean that everything they say is a lie. There's a lot of good biology in a biology textbook. A lot of good biology. I'm not against biology. But there's some lies in there that I think should be taken out. The book would be a lot smaller, a lot lighter if you take all the lies out. Kids wouldn't have to haul around so much. It would save energy. See, it's costing more gas for them to drive their car when the car weighs more from carrying this book with all the extra lies in here. Cut out about 75 pages. We could probably figure that out. I bet you'd save millions of dollars over a few years just on students driving their car to school, just by getting rid of the lies. So all you environmentalist wackos, join me in this. Help get the lies out of the books. Save the weight. Yeah. Let's see. This textbook says, since its formation 4.5 billion years ago, which is baloney, this right there, that's a lie, Earth has changed. It says, The life too has evolved on Earth. Now that's a lie. See, you got this word evolved. If you're going to talk about lies in the textbook on the topic of evolution, you've got to determine what are you talking about exactly. What does this mean? Evolution has 6 different levels or stages or meanings. First, you'd have to have cosmic evolution, the Big Bang. Where did the whole universe come from? I mean, there's a lot of matter, a lot of space, a lot of time. Where'd that come from? Time, space, matter. Well, they text why cosmic evolution matters. Cosmic evolution from Big Bang to humankind. Oh, so the dot of nothing banged, and here we are, over billions of years. Okay, that's what this is stupid. This shouldn't be in a science book. Should be in a fairy tale book. Okay, how did the universe start smaller than an atom? Whoa, this ought to be good. Let's see. This is from the European Space Agency. Time, space, matter all began with a Big Bang. In a fraction of a second, the universe grew from smaller than a single atom to bigger than a galaxy. Tell all the folks at the European Space Agency, I said they're stupid for saying that and believing that. That is not science. That is stupid. Call them up. Tell them Hovind said that, and I challenge them all to a debate on that topic. You couldn't squeeze a gallon of milk into a dot smaller than an atom. You couldn't squeeze a cup of water. You want to put the whole Pacific Ocean in there and all the galaxies? Use your head, guys. Come on. Smaller than an atom to bigger than a galaxy. Our universe, at the earliest stages we can ascribe a size to, is roughly the size of a human being. Oh, Forbes, they're brilliant up there. I challenge all you guys at Forbes to the same debate, okay? It expanded. Let's see. The Big Bang was the moment 13.8 billion years ago when it began as a tiny, dense fireball that exploded. This is what they're teaching. And Donnie, this is absolute insanity. How did matter come from nothing? Whoa. The first long-lived particles of any kind were protons and neutrons, which together make up the atomic nucleus. They came into existence around 1/10,000th of a second after the Big Bang. This is just pure propaganda. There's no science in this statement at all. This ought to be removed from the textbooks. The whole idea of the Big Bang should be removed from the textbooks. It's not science. Put it in a fairy tale book or put it in the garbage, better yet. This is dumb. Look up, do they ever stop and think about what they think about? Think about it. You really believe your whole body fit in an atom, not smaller than an atom along with all the galaxies? That was crowded. How many remember that? Remember how crowded that was in there? Boy, that was crowded, wasn't it? Woo! And then it banged. That would have killed everybody. What happened? Let's see. What is the Big Bang theory? Simply put, the universe as we know it started in infinitely hot. Wait a minute. You know the definition of infinitely? Any of you mathematicians out there want to correct this, idiots writing this? How can you squeeze infinite into a dot? A single dense, now that's their brain right there, the dense, okay? A dense single point that infatuated, that's really what happened, and stretched, okay? First, unimaginable speeds. Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't write any of this, okay? I'm just showing you what they're saying. Astronomy, stackexchange.com. The Big Bang, the universe underwent a rapid expansion, doubling in size at least 80 times in less than a trillionth of a second. How could you possibly know this, okay? What would make you think something so stupid, okay? So dumb. Stop and think about that. The universe doubled in size. You know what happens when you double something 80 times? Try it. Put your calculator, 2 times 2, that's 1. Then times 2 times 2 times, do that 80 times. And your calculator will start to smoke and melt, and the numbers aren't big enough, okay? And you want to double the size of the universe 80 times in a trillionth of a second. How long is that? This rapid inflation was fueled by a mysterious form of energy that permeated empty space itself. This, Donnie, I can't explain how stupid this is. All of this is stupid. And you atheists watching tonight, please call in and defend this scientifically. Come on, bring it on, AJ. I'll talk about the drill I got from later, okay? As doubling the increased, the energy of the vacuum underwent a metamorphosis. Wow, okay. Big Bang explains how the universe began with an infinitely hot, dense, single point that inflated and stretched. What was before the Big Bang? Oh, it's a mind-boggling question. We don't know. The entire universe existed as a singularity, a point smaller than a subatomic particle, according to the Big Bang theory. I didn't write any of this. You guys believe this. This should not be in the textbooks. It's not science. Big Bang theory. The cosmos, let's see, goes through super fast inflation, expanding from the size of an atom to a grapefruit in a tiny fraction of a second. Look, the first law of thermodynamics says matter cannot be created or destroyed. Well, then how did this matter get here? You want to have an exception to that to start your universe? So if you're going to talk about evolution, you need to first define what are you talking about? Cosmic evolution? There's no evidence for this. None. First law of thermodynamics, energy is that heat is a form of energy, and thermodynamic processes are therefore subject to the principle of conservation of energy. This means that heat energy cannot be created or destroyed. Well, then where did all the heat for the universe come from? There's a whole lot of heat being put off by all these stars, you know. Where did it come from, guys? It can't be created or destroyed. See, that's why evolution, this Big Bang theory especially, is anti-science. It's not part of science. It's anti-science. Let's see, energy exists in many forms. It cannot be created or destroyed. I agree. The first law of thermodynamics eliminates the Big Bang theory, period. You want to talk about laws? NASA believes in the first law of thermodynamics, I think. Well, so they say they do, but yet they teach the Big Bang. Don't you guys stop and think? You have two contradictory thoughts going at the same time. What on earth is wrong? Okay, first law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. I don't think anybody argues about that. As far as we know, that's a law. See, the Big Bang is not even a theory. It's a hypothesis, okay? Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Can't be created or destroyed. Can't be created or destroyed. Well, then where did the energy come from? All you atheists out there watching, give an answer, please. Not a theory, not a hypothesis. And until you can answer this simple question, the rest of your theory is meaningless, because you don't have an answer for where time, space, matter, energy came from. It can't form itself. Somebody outside of time, space, matter has to make that. I believe in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. In the beginning, there's time. God, there's the source, the force, and everything, created the heaven, there's space, and the earth, matter. God made time, space, matter. I believe that. But I tell everybody that's my faith. I believe that. You guys want to hide and think, and you tell everybody what you believe is actually science. It's a religion. Evolution is nothing but a religion, and it should not be in our public schools. That's for sure. Should not have any government support of any kind. No tax funding of any kind should go to teach that dumb evolution theory. Okay. Solar energy is the most abundant energy resource on Earth. 173,000 terawatts of solar energy strike the Earth continuously, 10,000 times the world's total energy use. Since all scientists agree energy can't be created or destroyed, where did the energy come from? Evolutionists cannot and will not answer this simple question. The origin of energy is essential to their theory, and until you answer that, nothing else matters. If I started off a story and said, well, suppose elephants can fly, then stop right there. The rest of the story is meaningless. Elephants can't fly. Stop. You guys don't have anything to go on. God claims he did it. Thou, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth. The heavens are the works of thine hands. They shall perish. They wax old as doth a garment. The Bible clearly teaches the first and second law of thermodynamics. God created everything, and since then it's been running downhill. Everything tends to wear out, decay. Let's see. They shall perish. They wax old as doth a garment. Most thinking people today know it is dumb to worship a dot of nothing that exploded into an ordered universe of life. Well, Donnie, I've already used up nearly 20 minutes of my time. Let me get just one of the major lies in the textbooks. Let's see. The fossil record. There is no such thing as a fossil record. There are fossils by the zillions, but there's no such thing as a fossil record. There's no such thing as a geologic column. It doesn't exist. They say the layers are different ages and the top layer is younger. I keep asking them, hey, if this top layer is younger, where did it come from? Outer space? Is Earth being added to from space all the time, and all these layers formed from material coming from space? Is that where the geologic column comes from? Look, they keep claiming these layers are different ages, yet all over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, running through all the layers. We just had to cut down, probably 70 trees on our property from the stupid pine bark beetles. Don't worry, we got about 14,000 left. But trees, a dead tree is only going to stand there for a couple of years. It's going to fall down. I believe during the flood, take my slides down, brother. During the flood, the earth was covered in water. The moon is holding a bump of water called the high tide, and the earth is spinning around. The bump stays under the moon. So while the earth is spinning, the people on earth get to see high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. Okay? No, it's easy to understand all that. But that bump stays under the moon. And every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes, the people on earth experience a tidal change from high tide to low tide. But if the earth were covered in water like in Noah's flood, the tide would be about a 200-foot tide. You guys at Canada, the Bay of Fundy, get a 100-foot tide once in a while up there, the spring tide or neap tide, spring tide. So if the bump stays under the moon and the earth is turning, that means from this side, the water is constantly being sucked in at the same speed the earth is turning the other way. And at the North Pole, the earth is turning 0 miles an hour. At the equator, it's 1,037.6, depending upon your altitude and if it's high or low tide. Okay, so if the water is going sideways at 1,000 miles an hour, or 1,600 for you Canadians, meters per second, meters per hour, kilometers per hour, I'm sorry. If the water is going sideways at 1,000 miles an hour, that's going to create a phenomenon called tidal pumping. Just the tide going up, down, up, down, up, down every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes is going to make the water rush in and out of that bump, the tidal bump. And that's going to form all the layers to the earth sideways. They don't form this way, they form this way. And I don't know how they don't get it, Donnie. I just don't know how. I'm trying to help them. Meanwhile, I'm trying to make fun of them, okay? Because it is stupid to believe that. All those layers are the same age. I keep asking them, guys, if I shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card now younger? No. Let me guess. What's the youngest card? Whoa, Jack of Spades. Okay. No, all the cards are the same age. And shuffling the dirt around on the earth, moving it around, doesn't change the age of it. All the layers formed in 1 year from Noah's flood. There's no such thing as a geologic column. No such thing. There's no such thing as a fossil record. There are lots of fossils. No question. But it's not a record. None of them talk. Dig up a fossil. You'll notice it doesn't talk and it doesn't have a date on it. No such thing. One of the big lies that bothers me probably the most is this one about embryology. Embryology, evidence for evolution, has come from a studying of embryos of organisms of different species. This is propaganda. This is a lie. This is worse than a lie. This is dangerous to teach this one. They say the embryo has gills like a fish. Think critically. Humans didn't evolve from dinosaurs, yet a human embryo would probably have several features of development patterns in common with a dinosaur embryo. Why would this be the case? Well, if I was a student taking that class and they asked me that question, I'd say, well, maybe that's a good system that the embryo has to go through to develop properly. I bet you'd find when they make cars and trucks, they start off with a frame, then they add the different parts to it. That's a good way to do it, isn't it? I think today's the anniversary of Henry Ford developing the assembly line, where instead of the worker moving past the car went past the worker. I think today's the anniversary of that. Congratulations, Henry. You did a good job. So maybe there's similarities in the embryos because it's a design. It's a necessary method of designing and building. Maybe there's similarities in the embryos because of the common designer designed them. The same God designed the dinosaur and the human. This is lie number 12. If you get my video series, Donnie, Lies in the Textbook is the video number 4 in here. You get the whole series for $50. Get a bunch for Christmas and give them to your friends, stocking stuffers. We get my video series. Number 3 is about dinosaurs in the Bible. Number 4, lies in the textbooks. There are 50-some lies, at least in the average book, that are used to support this stupid evolution religion, embryology. I Googled this an hour ago, okay, just before this program. Khan Academy is still teaching that the evidence for evolution comes from embryology. Let's see, bio.libretext.org is still teaching it. Sciencing.com is still teaching it. Let's see, NECSI, who is that? New England Complex Systems Institute, teaching that embryology is evidence for evolution. NCBI is still teaching it. Embryology development, let's see, XPIL, EXPII, still teaching it. This was proven wrong in 1874, guys. Darwin made up the stupid idea of evolution, and he publicized it more than anybody. And then there was no evidence for it after 1859. So in 1869, somebody lied and made up some fake drawings, Ernst Haeckel did, and they're still teaching Haeckel's drawings as evidence for evolution, proven wrong in a court of law in 1874. Get it out of the books, guys, out of court, in a university court, okay? Evidence from development. Similarity between stages in development helped convince Darwin that all forms of life shared a common ancestor. Darwin said this was his best evidence in favor of this theory, of his own theory. Haeckel called it the biogenetic law. Let's see. Comparative embryology. And here's when I was over in Ireland, I got some of their textbooks and looked, same thing. The presence of fish-like structures in embryos shows these animals have evolved from fish. Oh, let's see. It's as if the embryo retains a memory of its origins and starts to copy them during development. Sick mind Freud said ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. What's that mean? Well, the baby developing in the mother goes through stages. We got a newborn here, about 5 weeks old, over back there in the back row. Babies develop in the mother and they go through stages, okay? I agree. And they say that recapitulates or reenacts evolution. This is dumb. Those aren't gills like a fish, lie number 12 in our textbook. Those bones in the, those folds of skin under the embryo and they're develop into bones in the ear, incus and all the bones in the ear, and jawbone, glands in the throat. Nothing to do with evolution. Nothing to do with breathing. I've seen fat folks got 5 or 6 chins. They can't breathe through any of them but the top one. Are those gill slits on the side of the Buick Roadmaster? No. Haeckel said the turning point in his thinking was when he read Darwin's book. So Darwin wrote the stupid book, and Haeckel read it and believed it and started looking for evidence. By 1868, evolutionists were worried about the lack of evidence. So Haeckel made up some. He made up this family tree stuff, which is pure baloney. There is no family tree. He was worried about a gap between non-living and living. And by the way, they're still worried about that. There is no evidence of how a non-living bunch of chemicals can form life. So Haeckel made up a complete creature called the Monera. He invented it. There never was one. In 1869, he claimed to discover them, okay? He named them Bathybius Haeckel in honor of Ernst Haeckel. Let's see. So chemists discovered it's just calcium sulfate from seawater, nothing. Haeckel refused to admit he lied and kept published his book showing his Monera, a non-existent creature, as evidence for evolution. We can talk about, watch my video number 4. Here's what happened though. Here's a dog embryo at 4-week development and a human embryo at 4 weeks. Haeckel changed them and made them look exactly alike. That's Haeckel's drawings of a dog and a human embryo. And then he said, wow, look how similar they are. Yeah, you changed the drawings, you moron. Haeckel made huge charts of all kinds of animals developing inside the mother and said, look at this. They all look alike at the early stages. That proves we're related. Okay? On top are Haeckel's drawings. Underneath are actual photographs from 25 years ago. Haeckel was tried by his own university in Jena, and he confessed, and he said, well, some of my drawings are fake, okay? But everybody else lies. Watch my video 4 for more on that. It's been proven wrong since 1874, but they're still teaching it in the textbooks as evidence for evolution. I'll show you. This is not science. You guys claim you got evidence. Here's a college textbook used at the University of West Florida when I did my debate down there. Evolutionary analysis. They got Haeckel's chart, the same chart, proven wrong 150 years earlier. Come on, guys, get up to speed. University of North Dakota, still using Haeckel's chart. I Googled it just a few minutes ago, an hour before I came in. They're still teaching this stuff. It's just plain a lie. Donnie, I am sorry. This is only one of the many lies in the textbooks they're teaching as evidence for evolution, still using these fake drawings. I could go through a whole bunch more lies in the textbooks if you'd like, but my time is up. So, okay. You wanted to know about the whale or something else? Well, ask that in a question and we'll get to that there. I'm sorry,
yeah, why don't we do that, Ken? No, you did a great job. I love your energy. You always keep these presentations entertaining, which is why they fly by. So why don't we address or engage whale evolution? Because that is still, like embryology, that is still an argument that is heavily employed by the evolutionist camp. They'll look to the so-called series of whale creatures, Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, Basilosaurus, so on and so forth. But a major point that they focus on is the so-called whale vestigial pelvis, a leftover remnant from the walking whale days, basically. So
go to the museum, that whale pelvis. Sure, I got one in my museum here.
Okay.
Here's a science dictionary, American Heritage. Whoa. Let's see, whales, for example, have small bones located in the muscles of their body walls that are vestigial bones of hips and hind limbs. What? Oh, yeah. Here's a biology Curtis and Barnes textbook from, 40 years ago. Many organisms retain traces of their evolutionary history. For example, the whale retains pelvic and leg bones as useless vestiges. Let me see if this 2017 biology textbook, who's this, Campbell, okay, does it have the whale as evidence for evolution? I should have looked that up. It's busy around here, Donnie. Let's see. Whale. Evolution of the whale. This is one they always use. Whale. Oh, there's 30 different pages of it in here. Somebody want to see if they can find it in here for me? Whale evolution. Here, I debated Jeannie Scott, National Center for Science Miseducation. And she said one of the best evidences for evolution was the whale evolution. Okay? National Center for Science Education at Berkeley, California. And Jeannie, I'll take you on anytime, on your channel, my channel, Donnie's channel. Call her up, Donnie. Berkeley University, see if they want to, Jeannie Scott or maybe Skip Evans is still there. I'll take any of them on. They say the whale has a vestigial pelvis and leg bone that serve no purpose. Really? Modern whales have hind limbs which have been reduced to only a few tiny internal hind limb bones that have no function. This is what they're teaching, okay? Just imagine whales walking around. It's true. Here's the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History. They got a whale skeleton hanging from the ceiling. Pretty impressive. And there, right there, where the abdomen would be of the whale, are these bones hanging down. And they call that the whale's pelvis. Really. And they say, see, that's proof the whale used to have hind legs. Well, we happen to have one in our museum here. Thank you, brother. Here's one of the little bones out of a whale. You found it? Okay. Look at that. Still teaching whale evolution on page 480 of this 40-pound textbook here. So we should cut this page out and save gas, save the planet from global warming. Yeah. Okay. This is one of the bones of one of the types of whales. There are different shapes of these things. These are not a vestigial pelvis. National Pornographic still teaching millions of years ago, dolphins had legs. Really, dolphins and whales. Yeah. The whale's pelvis is located far from the vertebra and has no apparent function. Well, somebody who believes that should not be writing a biology book because you're an idiot. Have no function. It's got a blood supply, nerve supply. It's amazingly designed. This is part of the whale's reproductive system. Whales are pretty big. They have to mate underwater in the dark, and they can't talk and say, scoot over, honey, okay? They have a penis 15 feet long. You've got to maneuver that thing in the dark underwater without being able to talk. It's nothing to do with evolution. You got to have special bones to move things around. Idiots. Biology, whale, I did a series on that on YouTube a couple of years ago now. Those bones are part of the whale's reproductive system. They have nothing to do with evolution. The erotic endurance of whale hips. In this article, they teach Carl Zimmer, debate him any day. They teach, oh yeah, the whale still has those because it's enduring from a leftover leg. No, it's not. It's designed to make baby whales. I don't know how they can be so stupid, Donnie. Hope stupidity is not contagious. Okay. So anyway, it's got nothing to do. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as a vestigial structure. No vestigial structures at all. Certainly not the whale hips. Okay, go ahead.
Another couple so-called vestigial structures that they like to use are the appendix and also goosebumps. What are your thoughts on those? Are those really the ancient remnants of past evolutionary ancestors?
Well, let's see. I've got 10 million slides here. I don't know if I have the appendix in this section or not. I'll just give an answer here.
Sure.
The appendix is part of your immune system, just like your tonsils. The first defense against eating something that might have bacteria was your tonsils. So they take them out when there are no vestigial structures. If there were, that would be the opposite of evolution. That's not going to help. They need to have nascent structures, things coming in. We see things that they think are vestigial. You don't need it anymore. That's the opposite of what you need for your theory, you guys. Okay. But no, the appendix is part of your immune system. If you take it out, if you take your appendix out, I've got it right here. I think I got it somewhere. Appendix. I got too many slides, 50,000 of them. So it's part of your immune system. If you take it out, you can live without it. But something else has to take over the task of immunity in your body. If you cut off one of your fingers, you can still live, you can still pick things up, but the other three got to work harder now because one's missing. Taking out your appendix is retarded. Don't do that unless it's infected, and that's the only option. Okay? Don't do that. And what was the other? Oh, goosebumps. Goosebumps are little tiny muscles called sphincter muscles around each hair of your body. And they all came from a dot of nothing exploding 13 billion years ago. When you get cold, those little muscles contract in a circle. Okay, a sphincter muscle, they contract in a circle, get smaller, and make the hair stand up. And that traps a layer of air against your body, which makes it easier to stay warm. That's an amazing design. It's got nothing to do with evolution. Why did they think? What are they saying about the goosebumps? Why would they think that's evidence for evolution, Donnie? What are they saying?
Well, I've heard a few different evolutionary fairy tales on that one. This one from the chat, Keeping Up, says goosebumps are from the feathers, must be April Fool's Day, are from the feathers we used to have when we were birds. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, if he believes that, he's still got his bird brain. No question about that. Nobody's ever seen a human produce a non-human or a bird produce a non-bird. And if you want to think the humans and birds are related, enjoy yourself, but don't call it science and don't put it in a science book. It's got nothing to do with science. That's a religious belief. Nobody's ever seen humans produce non-humans. How many of you had parents that produced you and they were also human? Anybody here in the room? Look at that. Go ahead, Donnie.
100 years ago, how many so-called vestigial organs and structures did they have? Listed about 140.
I think there was over 100 things that they thought were vestigial. One by one, they learned, oh, you need that. I'll tell you what, put a 10-year-old under the hood of your car, or a 6-year-old, open the hood and say, take out anything this car doesn't need. What's all these wires? We don't need all these wires. What's this doing here? They wouldn't know what any of it does. It doesn't mean it doesn't do something. It just means they don't know what it does, okay? So to have a human being look at this amazing human body and decide, well, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that, that is stupid from the get-go, okay?
You know, I remember when I was a kid, there was a lot of kids, they were getting their tonsils removed. They were getting frequent sore throats.
Yes, me too.
So would that basically be the wrong thing to do? Are they assuming that it is functionless, it is an evolutionary leftover, as to why they're so keen on removing them?
That's all from evolution teaching. And in my totally humble, unbiased opinion, it's really stupid to do that. Okay? Well, so all it does, part of your immune system, something else has to work harder. That's all.
Right. So another major one, and I know you've spoken on this, you might have a slide on it, the coccyx, our tailbone. They'll say that's a leftover remnant of our tail ancestors when we used to have tails.
That's what they teach. This is Wikipedia 5 years ago. The coccyx or tailbone is the remnant of a lost tail. All mammals have a tail at some point in their development. In humans, it is present for a period of 4 weeks. Really? Human embryo genesis. Oh, okay. The tail is most prominent in human embryos 31 to 35 days old. The tailbone, located at the end of the spine, has lost its original function. Again, that's the opposite of evolution, okay? Here's what they're talking about. That little tailbone right there at the bottom of the coccyx tailbones there. It's a very complex system of nerves and muscles that attach to the tailbone. It's a really complicated little bitty group of bones there that have all kinds of special muscles and special nerves that attach to it and blood vessels. It's a complex system, and it's not vestigial, okay? The coccyx serves as an anchor site for tendons, ligaments, muscles. It functions as an insertion point of some of the muscles of the pelvic floor. The coccyx functions to support and stabilize a person while he or she is in the sitting position. So they've known this for a long time. The tail, they say this is all that's left of the tail that most mammals still use. Discover magazine teaching that. Come on, guys. Here's a public school textbook, Holt Biology, one of the top 4 publishers. Some organisms have structures of organs that seem to have no useful function. Humans have a tailbone at the end of their spine that is of no apparent use. Wow. Vestigial tailbone in humans is homologous to the functional tail of other primates. Okay. Gray's Anatomy shows all about the tailbone. Attachment to 4 pairs of muscles and 1 single muscle on either side of the coccyx. If you think the tailbone is unnecessary, I will pay to have yours removed. Especially for you, AJ. You're going to find out real quick why you need that thing. Okay? At the end of your backbone is a coccyx, a few small bones that are fused together. Could the human coccyx be a vestigial structure, or is it the start of a newly evolving structure? They give 2 choices, neither of which is correct. It's like me saying, are elephants green or elephants orange? Neither one. Neither of these choices is correct. And this is a college textbook? No. How about another option, guys? It's designed just right for what it does. Really tough to make babies if you don't have your coccyx, okay? The vestigial structure, it's not a vestigial structure. They say, here's a baby born with a tail. That's proof for evolution. No, it's not a tail. There's no bones, no muscle, no cartilage. It's a fatty tissue growth, okay? It's often stated children are born with tails. But as the rule of allegedly tails are nothing but fatty or fibrous tumors that are met in many parts of the body without any embryological significance. Is that a tail? No. Here we go. Cutaneous horn, by the Latin name, let's see. Keratin skin tumors, okay? Wow, here we go. That happens all the time. It's unusual, but, I mean, it's not a tail. It's not vestigial. Coccyx at the end of the human vertebral column has no apparent function. Well, that textbook author should not be writing a biology textbook, that's for sure. Look, they say we lost our tail because we didn't need it. And I thought, wait a minute. Have you ever thought how handy a tail would be? If you come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries, wished you had something to open that door and walk right in? A tail would be great. No, it's not vestigial. That's lie number 24 in my series there. If you think the tail's vestigial, tell all the atheists, I not only, tell you what, I've got my Swiss Army knife right here in my pocket. I sharpened it today, okay? So if you think the tailbone is vestigial, come to Dinosaur Adventureland, bend over, I will remove yours right here in our place, okay? That is real, real dumb to believe such a thing. Go ahead. Now watch, Donnie, some of the atheists are going to clip out this little clip and say, wow, Hovind's threatening everybody with a knife. Aren't they? They are that desperate and that stupid.
They do tend to jump on anything that they can, Kev.
Anything they can find. Yep.
So everything you're saying is excellent. These are excellent answers. Does this same logic apply to junk DNA? Because I've noticed the evolutionists, now that they've lost their favorite argument in terms of vestigial organs and structures, they're now making the same argument, brother, but in the world of genetics. They're trying to say that the majority of our genome is junk, nothing but evolutionary leftovers. And I like the analogy you made earlier about the kid underneath the hood of a car, telling him, you know what, remove anything that's useless. He's not going to know. Me at 12, I didn't know what was useful, what everything did. And so can you speak to to that, Kent?
Well, the DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, is incredibly complex. The chromosomes in your body are phenomenal. The DNA, each chromosome is a separate molecule of DNA that ranges in length from 50 million to 250 million base pairs. One strand of your DNA can have up to 250 million rungs across the ladder. And you think that happened by chance. And if they don't get lined up right, or they get a mutation happens, it's always deleterious. Something goes wrong. If you unwound one DNA from your body, it'd be 6 feet long. And the copy process is phenomenal, how it has to copy and reverse directions. And if you took all the chromosomes from one human being, you have about 100 trillion cells in your body, each one, except for the gametes, with 46 chromosomes. Okay, let's see. If you unwound all the DNA from your body and tied it end to end, it would go across the solar system twice. Not just across planet Earth, across the solar system. And you think it happened by chance. I'm sorry, Kenneth Miller, you believe that, I know. I'll debate you up at Rhode Island University any day of the week, okay? Human, chimpanzee. So no, there's no such thing as junk DNA. If there were, that would be the opposite of evolution. It's losing something. That's not gaining. This whole idea of DNA and chromosomes having some junk in there is just absolutely stupid. Tell them I said so. You have a child under the hood of your car. Don't let him touch anything.
Right. Isn't it funny how their best so-called lines of evidence for why they're related to a banana plant is loss of structures, loss of genes, loss of organs? Where's the gain in these novel systems? That's what we want to see.
Nobody ever sees any. Tell you what, if you took the book, get a book on computer where you can read it and change some of the letters in a book, make a typographical error. That's not going to improve anything. They're claiming that this incredibly complex code, way more complicated than any book ever written, is a result of typographical errors. I don't understand the stupidity there, brother. Let's see. Clear cut. Let's see. I got stuff on the length of the DNA and all that stuff here. Signatures. Go ahead, brother. You got some comments in there. We got Crybaby always calls into our channel. So is he calling into yours too?
Yeah, we do have some questions and arguments here, actually. So let's start bringing some of the audience questions in, and then we'll open up the mic. See if there's any brave evolutionists who want to jump in and challenge anything you've said, Kent, or simply bring what they believe is the best line of evidence for evolution, but that kind of evolution that says humans and mosquitoes are related through common ancestry. So Jay Delgado, thank you so much for supporting the conference and supporting this show. God bless. And so let's see. Which of man's vital organs evolved first, second, third, so on and so forth? Here's the list: heart, lungs, intestine, skin, kidneys. Kent, any thoughts on that if you wanted to speak to? I think it's an anti-evolution argument. It's a good point, Jay.
Because atheists they won't touch that question. They have to all come into existence at the same time. They have to be created. They're designed for each other. Which is the nut or the bolt? You got to have them both if you're going to tighten something up, So each one of those features, whether it be the brain, the intestine, the skin, the kidneys, all of them are more complex than the space shuttle or the most advanced machine man's ever made. And yet they think it happened by chance. And they're symbiotic relationships where they work together. Your skeleton has to work with your circulatory system. Yeah. Which came first? The male or the female? That's going to be a problem. Yeah, if one evolved for millions of years without the other one, that can be really tough. It's a great question, Jay. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Oh, we lost audio on it, Donnie.
There we go. I'm back. Okay, so next question comes in from Born Again RN. Thank you so much, Steve. Question for Dr. Dino. If losing genetic information is evidence for evolution, then wouldn't our ancestors be smarter than us? Why do evolutionists teach the opposite, that we were dumber in the past?
That's a great question and a good point. And yes, I think they probably were smarter. They lived to be 900 according to the Bible and according to all kinds of legends of the Golden Age. I think they really did. Plus, Adam walked and talked with God for a while, maybe 100 years. Plus, Adam was made preformed. I mean, a fully loaded computer. He could walk, talk, name all the animals, and get married first day. God didn't make a sperm and an egg in the garden, hope you find each other. Okay? Made a full-blown human. So I think our ancestors were smarter. Maybe they didn't have all the fancy toys that we have today, the gadgets. Maybe they did. We don't know. But it's the opposite of evolution. They teach we came from a chimpanzee or something smaller, amoeba, and slowly progressing to current mankind. And someday we're going to sail around the universe and take over everything like Star Trek, or Pinky and the Brain. But yeah, great question. You're right. Evolution is the opposite of what we observe. It's not science at all.
Right. Imagine how many debates we could do, Kent, in 900 years. That would.
Oh, man. Imagine how many kids Adam and Eve had in 900 years. Man.
Right. Which is the typical question as well. Where did Cain find his wife? And who was he ostracized from? That he wouldn't be killed. Yeah. What is a good response to that, Kent?
I would say by the time Cain is old enough to kill Abel, let's pick a number and call them in their 20s or 30s. They get the argument and they kill. By then, Adam and Eve probably had 10 more kids. And then Cain had to marry a sister. There's no other choice. Adam married his own rib. So this would not be a problem when the gene pool is still pure. Today, it's a problem because similar genetic problems will be amplified. They didn't have any genetic problems back then. You could marry your own rib. Adam did.
Exactly. When the critics say, well, Adam and Eve, we start with two people, there would have been an inbreeding problem. Inbreeding reveals the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes. Would there have been genetic mistakes and mutations after creation with Adam and Eve, Kent?
If God made them perfect, there's not a problem.
Exactly.
Not a problem at all.
Okay, great stuff. So here's an argument from an evolutionist in the chat, Andrew Cumming. He says, for Kent, how do you reconcile what you just said with the fact that sponges and jellies don't have brains, flatworms don't have kidneys or hearts, etc.?
That's a great question. This proves evolutionists aren't related to sponges. The fact that God can create whole kinds of varieties of life forms, some of which can function with less or more, I think is an example of God's amazing design. They've now got cars that run without a gasoline engine. Whoa. Yeah. They got electric cars. Whoa. Okay. So this whole argument is silly. If flatworms don't have kidney, I bet they have something else that does the job. Type in velvet worm. I'm going to be speaking on that one here in my Making Babies. It was supposed to be for tonight on my program, Genesis Baptist Church. They don't have bones in their legs. They use hydraulic system to move all their 43 pairs of legs in symphony so they can walk with hydraulic pressure. How's their little brain keeping track of 43 pairs of legs and how much hydraulic pressure is in each one? So the fact that some of these creatures don't have some features, there are a lot of animals that don't have skeletons. Yeah, worms, okay? That's amazing design. I think God created such a wide variety of life forms and such a wide variety of ways of making babies, like my series I've been doing on Friday, just so the evolutionists would stop and think, man, you're right, this couldn't have evolved. But Andrew, you're not getting it, I'm sure. You think the fact that some animals don't have something is proof everything came from nothing. You need to go stop and think about what you think about.
Very good. That series is excellent, Kent. How are the evolutionists doing in terms of that challenge? Where do babies come from? Have they answered any of those challenges?
I think I'm on number 44 now of different animals or plants and how they reproduce. There are some strange ways some do it. Like the frog has babies out of its back or out of its mouth. They're not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm disappointed. You guys are a bunch of cowards. Come on, bring it on.
I think God created some organisms that way just to show how silly common descent is.
Right.
Evolution is. Okay.
Yep, I agree.
All right, here we go. Next question. Romsky. Question to Kent. Were there genetic mistakes after the flood within the children of the three sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth?
I think that's where it probably started. I teach, I believe very strongly in what's called the canopy theory. Some creationists don't believe that. They're wrong. I'm right. But I think when God first made the world, there was a canopy overhead, a couple inches thick of ice, maybe 10 miles up, I'm just guessing. And that helped block out some of the UV light and increased air pressure. And without the UV light, much of the UV light getting through, there would not be near as many genetic mistakes. And so the gene code was pure. If you look at the Bible dates, it says very clearly on my chart here, read Genesis chapter 5, the people before the flood came were living to be 900 years old. After the flood, it dropped off right away to 400, then 200, then 100. And today, hardly anybody makes it to 100. Something was different back here. I think they were protected by a couple-inch layer of ice, 10 miles up, held up either by the magnetic field, since super cold ice is magnetic, or by air pressure, like an inflatable building, or maybe a combination of the two. Maybe there's a third force. Maybe centrifugal force. I don't know. But they lived a long time, and there are lots of legends of what's called the golden age, when man used to live to be 1,000. Why would they have these crazy legends? Well, it's based on some truth. Okay, they really did. So I think after the flood, you would begin to see genetic degradation because of increased UV light, for one. And maybe now it became a problem with the inbreeding. How many generations later is that? You can count them up, quite a few. You get to Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So fair question. I think, though, that genetic mistakes is the opposite of what evolutionists need. They need new material coming in. How did that amoeba get the material, genetic information to make, let's see, what do humans have that amoeba don't have? Just about everything. Lungs, skeletal system, arms, legs, teeth, eyes, mouth. No, come on. Where'd all that new information come from?
Exactly.
Good question.
Where did all that novelty come from? So I got a question of my own. I'll pretend to be the uniformitarian, or the person who accepts the geologic column. They'll answer the question, typically, Kent. Where did the new layers come from? Well, they come from erosion or rocks being recycled through plate tectonics. We'll start with those two. Is that a real way to form new layers, Kent?
That is moving the material from one place to another. It's eroding from here, landing here, moving. If I move these cards around, does it make the top one younger? No. Every speck of dirt on the planet is the same age, whether it's 6,000 or 6 trillion. It's all the same age. Moving it to a new location isn't going to change the age. Petrified trees that are standing up are found all over the world. There's me by one in Yellowstone. Everybody was breaking pieces off of it, so they finally put a fence around it. Petrified trees in the vertical position. They're all over Joggins, Nova Scotia, Canada, brother. Donnie, go over there and get some pictures of that sometime. That's a long ways from you, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and what's Canadian gas? Your communist gas company up there is probably, what, $4 a quart now or something, or a liter?
It's not cheap, that's for sure. Petrified
trees standing up are found all over the place, and evolutionists just ignore this. They say, well, it's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. There's hundreds of, maybe thousands of them, sometimes running through 2 seams of coal. So this geologic column does not exist. There's no such thing as a Jurassic period. They get angry about this because that's their Bible we're attacking. This is my Bible. They attack mine all the time. Their Bible is that geologic column. And it's just plain stupid. Go to Joggins right there. Hundreds of petrified trees standing up, running through all the layers.
It's funny because they'll even say recycling, which assumes that the material's already there. They're just moving it from one place to another.
Right.
How is that changing? Right. Because then the other thing they'll point to is, well, some rocks form from magma and lava that ends up cooling through volcanic eruptions, igneous rock, and that's going to form new layers and create new material. But isn't that the same thing? Isn't that just material?
It's not new material. It's been changed. I can take a tree and burn it and turn it into ashes. Okay, it's still the same. It still doesn't change the age of it.
They just don't get it, right, Kat?
The Bible says the scoffers in 2 Peter chapter 3 would be willingly ignorant. That's the best way to describe it. They're stupid on purpose.
All right, very good, Kent. We just hit the hour mark. That hour flew by. So let's start bringing people in. And let's rumble in the debate dojo for a little bit. Although I'm going to bring in some creationists too, as they might have some questions. So Praise, we'll go in order. Praise, you were waiting patiently backstage about 20 minutes ago. And so good to have you, brother. How you doing tonight? I hope you're enjoying this conference. And did you have a question or comment for Kent?
I do, and it's a pleasure to be here, SOT, and also Dr. Ken Hovind, and I've been enjoying the conversation, very stimulating. So my question involves whales. So what evolutionists say is the early whales had legs, and we can see evidence of that now because they don't have any legs anymore, and it looks like a useless vestige that the whales have. So I think they claim that the whale is the best evidence for evolution we have, like the Rhodocetus, the Amblicitus, and these other ones out there that they claim came from a dog-like ancestor. So what would you say is a better explanation than the legs explanation, Dr. Ken Hovind?
The whales don't have legs. They've got two flippers that they use pretty efficiently. And they've got that bone that they use to make babies pretty efficiently. Apparently, there's still a lot of baby whales coming in out there. That's got nothing to do with evolution. So, and if they want to believe it came from a dog-like ancestor, well, believe whatever you want, but that's not science. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog, ever. Nobody's ever seen a whale produce a non-whale. So if they wish to imagine their family tree that they're related, and they do, they teach it right here, family tree. Let's see, where's the whale? There's the shark on there. Which does this one have the whale? Most of them do. Let's see right here. That's got a whale on there. And they're saying the whale and the dog and the human and the bird had a common ancestor. And this is propaganda. This isn't science. So they can believe that all they want. Show me the evidence.
Amen. I would second that with you, but I would say that the huge they're equipped with some type of, like for their reproductive sexual organs, it's a huge contraption they have, and that makes sense. But don't they have like 100-foot penis or something? Like these whales have to have this huge bone structure to secure
15,
it.
15 feet's the number I've always heard. Still,
that's nasty.
100 foot would be a long.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense why they have that bone structure there. But yeah, I appreciate that.
The duck has a penis longer than his body, and at the end of mating season, it falls off and he grows a new one. I'd like to know, A, how that evolved, B, what he thought about the first time it happened, and C, what he's going to tell his son when he's going off on his honeymoon. Well, son, here's what's going to happen. Oh, Dad, are you kidding? Oh, son, I'm serious.
Awesome stuff out there.
How did that evolve is a good question. That's for sure. Okay. Praise. Any other follow-up questions, brother?
Maybe just a quick one on the gap theory. Do you think it's possible, because the normal position by the gap theorists is that's their old Earth gap theory, creationist. But have you heard of young Earth gap theorists out there, Kent? And what would you say to that?
Well, the gap theory is usually people by that they mean there's a gap between the first two verses of the Bible, and there can't be any gap, because later he says it was the first day. And then later in Exodus 20 and in Exodus 31, he said he made everything in 6 days. Everything. So there cannot possibly be a gap between those first two verses or anywhere. The creation. The creation was 6 literal 24-hour days. That's the only way it's going to work. That's the clear teaching of Scripture, number one. Okay? If you're going to put a gap in there, you're going to have to get outside of Scripture to make that up. But that's the only way it works. There are so many billions of symbiotic relationships. Certain plants require certain animals to pollinate them. There are some flowers that hang down, and it takes a special bird with a beak that goes up to reach in and get the pollen and pollinate these things. Which came first, the bird or the flower?
Right.
I need to do a whole series someday. Maybe some of you can do Creationist. Do a whole series on symbiotic relationships. Different one each time, and make the atheist stand up. Come on, where's the evidence? How did this evolve? Don't give me a story. Show me some science. They won't do it. Just like my Making Baby series, they're not touching it.
I made a video responding to that series on the frog that keeps eggs in its back.
Oh, I think, yeah, you're good, Kat.
Who's talking? I can't hear him.
Well, let's do this. Actually, okay, so what we'll do, Praise, thank you so much, just to keep order in the court here. Praise, appreciate the questions. Let's now move, since we do got a nice mix of evolutionists, creationists. We just had a creationist give some feedback, a couple questions. AJ, we'll move to you now. Good to have you. I appreciate your time here. And we'll allow you to engage Kent. Gentlemen, let's do our best to stick to the creation evolution topic and not get into anything outside that, just to avoid the video getting flagged or having any issues or anything like that. So let's go. Let's have some fun. Rumble in the debate dojo. AJ, firstly, how you doing tonight? Secondly, what would you like to discuss?
Oh, I'm good. For your sake, Donny, I won't ask the question I was going to ask, but I was just saying that I made a video response to that Making Babies series about the frog that stores its eggs in its back. So now you know, Ken.
Oh, well, first of all, you're the last one should make a series on making babies, okay? But the idea that the frog had babies come out of its back, you made a video about it. Well, that proves I'm wrong right there. Man, if you made a video.
Why did you say I'm the... Okay. Why did you say that I'm the last person that should make a video on making babies, Ken?
Okay, well...
Why do you immediately go there?
Gentlemen, I think if we go any further on that...
No, I want to know, Kent. You said that I'm going to find out why the tailbone is not vestigial soon. What did you mean by that?
The tailbones, there are several of them, and quite a few muscles that attach to them that are essential for reproduction. Okay, the males of the animal, of almost all the animals, have to stimulate for the injection of the semen, which contains the sperm, into the female. And without those bones and those muscles that control the tailbone control those muscles and that movement that is usually necessary for this to happen. So it's not vestigial.
But why did you say that I'm going to find that out soon?
Well, I think you know why, AJ. You claim to be homosexual. So you just deal with that yourself, okay?
No, I want you to explain what you meant by that.
Well, let's not go into any more detail. AJ, let's, to be fair, have a response to that. And then let's transition right into the evidence for evolution or something that has been discussed throughout the night. We'll go back and forth on that. We'll have some good, cordial dialogue. But to be fair, AJ, go ahead. Real quick response. And then let's shift it back to evidence for evolution.
Well, I mean, I don't see why Kent gets to make these slap and run comments and then hide behind, oh, I don't want to get the video demonetized or something. Like he should stand by what he says instead of hiding behind these jabs and sniping comments.
Okay, Donnie, he's not going to give up on this, okay? He's determined to defend his lifestyle. Actually, it's a death style. Talk about slap and run. AJ, your whole channel is about me, slapping me and running. Your whole channel is that way. AJ, call Donnie, schedule a debate. I'll do one with you every day, okay? On the evidence for evolution. Where's the evidence for your religion? Bring the best one. You don't have any. There is none. You have a dumb religion, AJ. You've chosen to believe you came from a rock and you're related to a banana. You've chosen to believe that because you like the freedom it gives you from God's rules. That's why you've chosen that religion. There's no science behind what you believe. No.
Well, maybe a scientist can explain why God put the male G-spot inside the anus, but I'm not the one that brought this up, so I'll move it on to somebody else. I wanted clarification on what Kent said. That's all.
Well, okay, so everybody got their comments on that issue. AJ, is there something you wanted to bring up in terms?
I did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you say that evolution is a religion and atheism is also a religion. So does that mean that I have two religions?
No, you might have 20 religions. I don't know what all you believe. Yeah.
How can somebody have two religions?
You can have as many religions as you want. You believe there's no God. You can't possibly know that. You believe that. Okay, you can believe that. It's fine. That's a religious belief. You believe dogs and bananas and you are related. Do you believe you're related to a banana, AJ?
I've answered this question so many times, Kent. Bananas aren't living things, so it's a stupid question. Banana isn't a living organism. No, a banana plant is a living organism, not a banana. A banana is a fruiting body of a plant. You've been told this so many times, but you're just you don't learn. You don't want to learn anything, so you just want to repeat the same script over and over again because you think it's true.
I enjoy making fun of the answer you guys give. Okay, are you related to a banana plant?
Yeah, you like making fun of people. You don't want to answer questions in good faith and actually respond to questions. You just dodge questions and insult people.
I believe that evolution and the idea that you're related to a banana plant is dumb.
Yeah, you're very predictable, Ken.
It's a religious belief. And yes, I enjoy making fun of it. I think it's really enjoying. AJ, you should come over to my site and see how fun it is to make fun of the stupid religion of evolution. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to keep doing it till I die. And after that, my videos are going to keep going. So killing me won't do any good. Okay, go ahead. What's your question? What's your evidence? How about?
Okay, Tiktaalik.
What, Tiktaalik?
Yeah, why did the paleontologists who found Tiktaalik, why did they know exactly where to dig to find it?
Why? I don't know that they did know exactly where to dig to find it. There's no such thing.
Didn't they?
Do you believe the layers of the Earth are different ages, the geologic column, AJ?
They predicted where to dig by narrowing it down from 3 different spots, and they went there and they dug it up and found the fossil they were looking for. Why were they able to do that?
I think that the layers of the Earth are probably sorted based upon density. Different materials are different density. I think that the creatures in those layers may be sorted based upon 4 common sense reasons. Maybe the clams are found at the bottom because clams are already at the bottom when the flood starts. Maybe there is a sorting to the fossils based upon their body density, based upon their habitat, based upon their intelligence, based upon their mobility, but not based upon their evolution. Nobody's ever seen a clam produce a non-clam. But you guys want to have the clam turn into a fish, or turn into a bird. This geologic column is your Bible. It's retarded. There is no geologic column. If the layers are different ages, answer my question, where are these layers coming from? Moving it from here to here, erosion instead, it doesn't change the age. Why do you believe the layers are different ages? Are they coming from outer space?
You didn't answer my question.
Tiktaalik.
So they were able to find it because they knew about the flood sorting? Is that what you're saying?
No. Tiktaalik is a fish. Usually, fish would be found in the same layers if there was a flood that drowned a bunch of stuff, it would sort them out, and fish might be found in the same layer because they have similar body density to other creatures. Maybe it's based upon their habitat. They already live in the water. So I don't know. First of all, I don't know that they knew where to dig to find it. If that's the case, why don't they know where to dig to find gold and get rich? Okay.
They do.
So no, you're mistaken. Tiktaalik is not evidence for evolution. It's a fish that had short limbs before the fins, and they're saying it could walk on land. We don't know that. There are fish today that get out and walk on land. Yeah. Are they evolving into something?
It would seem so.
You have a fish buried in layers with trees as well.
I didn't catch that, Donnie. What did he say?
Well, let's do this, Andrew. Let's go one at a time. AJ,
go.
Kent, very good. AJ, feel free to stick around. We'll now start moving around the room. We'll go Apologetics 101. From my understanding, he had one question. And then, Andrew, you're next. And so that way we're kind of mixing things up, creationists and evolutionists. Okay. Right. Actually, before you do, we got a packed house. So I got 10 up on stage. I see people also joining in the back. We can only do 10 at a time. Okay. So anyway, Brian, go ahead, brother. Good to have you.
Okay. Yes. Could go ahead and let someone else go next, and then I'll come back in. My wife is calling for me, and she does not know that I'm on here.
Sure.
All right. Thanks.
No worries, Brian. We'll see in a bit. Okay, let's go Josh then. We'll go Josh and then Andrew. So let's see, Josh. Good to have you, brother. How you doing? And what's your question, my man?
Good. I just want to make one quick comment before my question, if that's okay. I think when Kent says things like you're going to find out, it has to do with him proving and showing evidence for a particular vestigial organ still being necessary. And I don't think it has to do with anything like he's going to try to come after you, AJ. So I don't know if that's the claim you were trying to make, but I think when he says that, he's just, this is what it is. I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay, I'm not coming after anybody. I'm just pointing out, if you had your tailbone removed, you would quickly find out why that was a mistake.
Okay. Now on to my question. So I don't know a lot about like the different types of like humans, like Homo sapiens and Homo erectus, and those different types of like humans. Are those examples of evolution, or is that like genetic mutation amongst the same human species like we know each other today? How do we consolidate that?
Yeah, well, the evolutionists teach that man came through a stage of, apes and chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans. They teach there's an improvement. I got slides on that someplace here. I think it's number. I got so many. It took me a while to find it. But watch my video number 2, where I talk about what the Garden of Eden was like and where the so-called cavemen fit in. There are people still today living in caves, okay? But there's no evidence that Homo sapiens came from something other than Homo sapiens. If they wish to believe they came from a monkey or a chimpanzee or orangutan or bonobo or whatever, that's fine. Believe what you want. But that's not science. We don't ever see a monkey produce a non-baby monkey. Don't ever see it. It doesn't happen. You can imagine it. That's why I got SpongeBob behind me all over the place. Evolution is imagination. Just imagine if we had billions of years, this could happen. Well, first of all, you don't have billions of years. That's easy to prove. Secondly, we don't see it happening today. There are billions of cows in the world. I don't know about billions, probably billions. They're always making baby cows every time. I mean, every time. There's a variety. Some are big, some are small, some give more milk, some have more beef, but they're always cows. And they always have hair, never feathers. So if you're to believe something, you can believe what you want. That's what I keep pointing out. And they don't like this, and they won't like it again. Evolution is a religion. It's a really dumb one, but you're welcome to it. I don't care what your religion is. But don't call it science. And don't teach it in a science book.
You said Homo sapiens have always produced Homo sapiens, but I think, Donnie, in the past, I've seen you show some charts which kind of show the genetic markers or indications where they've actually found a Neanderthal or something like that, and it shows how closely related we are. Did we have like some sort of speciation within Neanderthals and Homo erectus, or are those just completely different non-human primates?
Is that if it's for Donnie, he can answer. But the fact that there are some similarities in the DNA structure of humans and chimpanzees, well, it probably takes a whole lot of code to build a finger. I bet the computer code to make a mechanical finger like this work would be millions of lines of code in a computer system just to make a finger bend, okay? So to make your finger bend in your DNA code probably takes millions of lines of code. Now, chimpanzees also bend their fingers. Whoa. I bet they got a lot of similar lines of code to accomplish the same thing. That's not proof they're related to each other. It's proof they got the same designer that used the same code to bend the fingers. So sure, there are similar codes in the DNA and the chromosomes. It doesn't prove their relationship. It proves the same designer. They don't want that designer because that designer has rules. Oh, they don't want that. So they'll deny he exists. Okay?
Right. Rather than accepting the evolutionist classification, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, we would just say they're all humans. Homo sapiens. They're not different species. So I agree with Kent.
There's only one race. There's only one race of humans, okay? The human race. There are different skin colors. There's different colors of dogs. There's different colors of cows. They're still cow. So, and humans have always produced humans, no exceptions, none. If you wish to believe otherwise, you believe what you want, but stop calling that science. I can call up my pictures. I've got on video number 2, I've got all the so-called cavemen that they got lined up as evidence for evolution. I'll call it up real quick here. So again, I point out, look, I don't care what you believe, but it's not science. That's all. It's a religion that they believe in, and they believe it strongly, and they will defend it like Hamas defends their religion. No question. They really believe it. I don't question their sincerity or their belief. I just say it's not science. That's all. Okay.
The last thing I'll say is I always hear people, they try to like anticipate or predict what it is that you're going to say, or they always accuse you of having the same spiel. But I would just say to that maybe he's just consistent, and maybe it's just the truth. Maybe you need to start accepting it instead of just predicting what you think he's going to say.
Yeah, their argument is Hovind has the same response every time. Well, I think all mathematicians do the same thing, don't they? 2 + 2 has been 4 for a long time. Are they supposed to change it once in a while to make it more true? It's true that cows produce cows. That's every farmer in the world will tell you that. You wish to believe otherwise? I'm going to keep saying it too. Cows produce cows, dogs produce dogs, humans produce humans. There are no exceptions. So anything other than that is something they choose to believe. It's not science. I'm trying to find my section in seminar 2 about cavemen, but just trust me, it's in my video number 2.
I'll look it up later. Okay.
And for AJ, I will send you a set of my tapes for free for Christmas. Send your address to Joseph, or post office box if you don't want to give your address. Give it to Joseph. We'll send you a set for free. Okay. I pray for you. I'm concerned for you. I think people in your situation oftentimes get suicidal. I don't want to see that. I want to see you come to the Lord, just so you know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I somehow doubt that. But the field of mathematics is updated all the time. And just because you say the same thing doesn't mean, I mean, I know you think it's true, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't upgrade your presentation at all, ever. Like if you have slides that make jokes about Bill Clinton, don't you think those are a little bit outdated?
AJ, I spend 5 hours every day of my life adding PowerPoint slides, making new slides, updating my presentation. I work very hard at this. I now have over 50,000 slides that I use, and some of them are old. I agree. I don't update all 50,000 every day, okay? But I take this very serious. I try to keep up to date. I work on it very hard. I published new slides that I got just before this seminar, just before tonight's message. I went on, got new slides of what they're still teaching in the textbooks. That's not true. So I say, look, if you wish to believe in evolution, great. So no, when I taught mathematics, I never had to update my teaching that 2 + 2 was 4. Never had to update it. Probably never will, because it is. When you teach trigonometry, sine, cosine, tangent, you teach about the different angles and how this angle changes and this side has to change and this side changes, and SOHCAHTOA, sine, all that stuff. I taught that for years, and biology, nothing. Some things just simply don't change. So the fact that I've got a slide from 1999, that could it still possibly be true? Why do I have
Not if it says Bill Clinton is the president?
When I made that seminar, he was the president. It was true. What, was Bill Clinton ever the president?
Yeah, he was. I'm just saying that.
And when I did that, when I made that slide, and when I used that point, and when I made that video, he was president. I'm sorry.
And I wasn't talking about basic addition either. I'm talking about mathematics at the highest levels. They develop new theorems and new discoveries are made.
Do you think there's going to be a new mathematics come along to change the fact that 2 + 2 is 4?
No, that's what I just said.
Okay, good. All right. Donnie, who else you got? AJ wants to hold the whole conversation. He's got his own little channel, and he wants everybody to come over to see his. I'll promote it for you. Atheist Junior. Okay, go ahead.
Well, more people watch me anyway than you. So.
Well, from my understanding, we're gonna get the much anticipated round 4, 5, one of those coming up. So, okay, let's go Andrew now. Andrew's been waiting patiently. Andrew belongs on the evolutionist side. So
we can fix that.
Yeah, we're gonna fix that right now, Andrew. So, Andrew, firstly, how you doing? Secondly, what point would you like to engage with Kent?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Is my audio coming in okay? I was having some internet lagging issues earlier.
Coming in good now.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, sorry about that. So what I kind of want to talk about was the point I was trying to make with the question I posed earlier regarding the order in which organs evolved. It at least seemed like Kent was originally making the argument that all these organs had to be in place at the same time in order for an organism to function or live properly. I don't know if Kent is still making that argument, so I want to clarify that and to clarify the argument I was trying to make.
Andrew, one topic at a time. Okay. Yes, I believe the organs that he mentioned, the skeletal system, digestive system, reproductive system, have to be at the same time. There are some creatures that don't have some of those things. And if somebody wishes to arrange them in some kind of fictitious order, claiming this one turned to this, that would be a religious belief. That's not observable scientifically. So, yes, I believe the symbiotic relationships of all of the 11 systems that humans have had to be designed. Each system is complex. Getting them to work together is really complex. Your digestive system works with your circulatory system. That's amazing. So if you wish to...
But you did say that they had to be all together in order for it to function, right?
Well, in humans, yes, you have to have all the systems. Some parts can be missing. I bet your car would still run without the fenders on it. Okay.
So this only applies to humans, not all organisms?
Well, I think nearly all organisms are designed so that they probably could run without a few things. I bet you could drive on a flat tire for a while too. Okay. But that doesn't prove it's not designed. You want to say, evolutionists often want to say, because we can live without the appendix, or because we can live without our tonsils or adenoids or whatever, therefore we evolved. No, I think that's evidence it was amazing design so that it could run. Somebody built a car one time that any tire could go flat, it would still run level. It was perfectly balanced to run on any 3 tires. I forget who did that, some Italian company or something, but that's cool. I think that it's evidence of design. So if humans can live without one of their fingers, or 2 of their, people can live without both their arms, and both their eyes. That I don't think they like it, but they can. That's not proof it evolved, though. So do you have any evidence of any system coming onto the scene, not that you can live without it? Where's the evidence of one developing?
Well, because organ systems, let me put it this way. Organ systems don't typically arise de novo. They are modified from pre-existing tissues. So there's this whole field called evolutionary developmental biology that deals with that.
Now, one topic at a time. So you're saying the organ systems developed from something that was pre-existing.
Yes.
First of all, are there any limits to how far it can develop? And do we see this happening?
There are physical limits to organismal evolution, yes. They're the laws of physics.
There are some creatures that have a 3-chambered heart and some have a 4-chambered heart, like humans.
Yes.
Is there evidence of one changing to the other? Or do you just want to put
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Has anybody ever seen a creature with a 3-chambered heart produce babies that had a 4-chambered heart?
No, but we wouldn't expect that in a single generation.
Okay, so you imagine it happened over a long period of time, but that's not science. We don't see it happening. The ones that have a 3-chambered heart are still having babies with a 3-chambered heart every time.
Well, the argument that I was specifically responding to was because I hear this argument often that such and such structure is necessary, so it couldn't possibly have evolved, or that it was impossible to evolve in a certain order. So not necessarily that it did evolve a particular way, but that it couldn't have evolved at all. And that's what I was trying to show with these organisms, these examples that lack these structures, that no, they're not necessary.
Well, you may think some structures are not necessary. Is it necessary for you to have 2 arms?
For a human, yeah, but a flatworm doesn't need arms. A flatworm doesn't need a heart either.
Sure. Maybe and I bet if they have babies, they're just like mom and dad. So you want to believe because we can arrange animals in some kind of order, those without arms to those with arms, therefore, those without arms had to evolve to those with arms. That's where it's not science. We don't observe this.
That's not the argument I was making.
Well, okay. Science is what we can observe and study and test. Okay. Where is the observation that I can observe of any animal changing to something else, getting a new feature, for example?
I already answered that.
You did already answer that?
Yes.
Not an intelligible answer. Where is the scientific evidence?
Well, I guess that's your opinion, sure. I already said that supposedly what we may interpret as new structures are modified tissues that were already there. So, for example, to give an example, the anglerfish's lure, when you look at it developmentally, it develops from the first dorsal fin ray. So it migrates during development. So it's not really a new structure. It was just exapted for a new function.
Okay, I guess I didn't understand which particular tissue or organism you're talking about. What migrates now? What is it?
The anglerfish, the bioluminescent lure on the anglerfish, it initially during its development, embryonic development, starts out as a dorsal fin ray. So the fin rays along the back of the fish, and it migrates up towards the head and becomes the lure that it uses to catch fish.
Becomes a lure, right? That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's pretty cool how that works. I did my Making Baby series on the anglerfish, Has anybody ever seen an anglerfish produce a non-anglerfish baby?
No, but that's not the argument I was responding to.
The fact that one of the back fins migrates up and becomes the lure is pretty cool design. Do you think that? Do you have any evidence that it never was that way in the past? What we see is anglerfish make baby anglerfish all the time. Now you want to?
Well, I kind of said that though. It starts out as a fin ray and develops into the lure. That shows it wasn't the lure initially.
Well, no, it doesn't. It shows that it was still the lure and not done developing yet. It's like when you go to Ford Motor Company and see a bunch of steel parts laying there. It's not a car yet. They didn't put it together. So you don't know that fin on the back evolved into the lure on the front. It was designed to do that from the beginning. I bet if you could.
What is your evidence for that claim? That it was designed to develop like that?
Well, I don't have to prove the creation model. I'm not asking it to be taught in schools. You guys want to believe that because one of the rays of one of the fin rays.
You kind of are. The burden of proof is on you. You're the one making the claim here. So support it.
You guys want us to all pay for these textbooks to teach evolution, and you want to use that as evidence that the anglerfish. I bet if we could decipher the code, the DNA code of the anglerfish, it's written in that code someplace, which is difficult to read, that this fin ray is going to move up and gradually migrate to the forehead and become a lure to catch other fish. Maybe that's been in the code from the very beginning. Maybe it was designed that way to do that.
I mean, that's not exactly how developmental genes operate.
Oh, well, tell me, has anybody ever seen an anglerfish produce a non-baby anglerfish?
I already answered no.
Okay, so the answer is no. Why do you believe the anglerfish came from something that was non-anglerfish? Do you believe these family trees where everything came from a protozoa or an amoeba? Do you believe the anglerfish came from a protozoa over billions of years?
The protozoans are a specific clade, so no.
Okay, a single cell creature.
They developed from a more primitive eukaryotic cell, yes.
That's where I'd like to know the scientific evidence for you making that statement. You say it developed from something that was primordial. Where's the science for this? Let's take a single cell creature. Which one you want to start with? Amoeba, protozoa, bacteria, whichever one. Did one of those single cell creatures evolve into the lure of the anglerfish over many generations? Is that what you believe?
Into the lure? No, that's not how.
Into the whole fish. The whole fish came from a single cell creature. Is that what you believe?
Not from those organisms. No, they're modern organisms.
Okay, let's see. Let me get to.
Such a
amoeba isn't a catch-all term for all eukaryotes.
Okay, let's see. This one doesn't have an anglerfish. Let me call one up here. This chart has all the fish together. Fish and humans and birds all coming from a single-celled creature. Usually they say something like a protozoa, like this textbook teaches. This is a junior high textbook. I got college textbook.
No, it's not a protozoan.
Okay. Do you believe this chart represents, here we have the fish on here. Do you believe the fish came from a single-celled creature of some kind?
Yes.
Okay. What's your evidence for that? That's what I'm saying. You guys are welcome to believe this. I don't care. But quit calling it science. It's not science. It's a religion. You believe these charts.
Well, you can compare the genes, for example, and connect them using phylogenetic algorithms. Okay.
If the gene code of a single-celled creature has some similarities to the fish, that doesn't prove evolution or even give evidence for evolution.
Not just the similarities, the differences as well.
Okay, or the differences. I bet Chrysler, when they produce their cars, might have a few differences to how Ford does it. So they're still producing a car.
So let me ask you a follow-up question based on, because you did mention that there are some companies that produce free-wheeled cars, for example. Right.
Yeah.
So so you're basically making the claim that there are similarities between cars, and that can be due to design. And so there are similarities between biological organisms, so that could have been due to design. But what about, like you said, those examples of cars with free wheels or other cars with different engine parts? These designers can swap parts between different manufacturers. We don't see that in living things. You don't see you don't see, for example, a flowering plant or what?
Wait, Andrew. We swap parts all the time. I can eat.
Yes,
olives.
human designers do that.
I can eat the plants and take the parts from the plant and make it part of my body. I bet you've been doing that all your life, eating things other than humans.
That's not what I was saying. That's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the characters we use to define those organisms.
Okay, well, if is there any engine on planet Earth ever, V8, V6, straight 8, straight 6, V12, a rotary engine, Wankel engine, is there any engine ever that didn't have a designer?
No, but you can have similar vehicles that have multiple designers. So what does that show? That designers can swap different parts between their product.
Yeah, if you want to argue there's multiple gods that did it, that's a different argument. The fact is there has to be a designer between every living thing on the planet. If you wish to imagine that you're related to a protozoa like this textbook teaches, I say more power to you. But don't put it in science class. That's a religious belief.
Despite the fact that we don't see the same pattern that you just mentioned in cars, in living things, that's the point I was trying to make. We don't see that swapping of, you can take a part from this car, from this manufacturer, and use it in this car from a totally different manufacturer, and it'll still function just fine. You don't see that in living things. You don't see mammals with feathers, for example, or these kind of chimeric organisms that we see in mythology, for example. You don't see that.
We do see that. Have they ever done things where they take like an ape's heart or something and put it into a human? Has there been a lot of experimentation with parts of animals being put into humans that need something? I think you need to study some science on that.
The organisms as they exist in their natural environment.
Well, like I said, in my natural environment, I eat plants and animals. Let's see. I eat pieces of the pig, the cow, the chicken, and they turn into Kent Hovind.
But your cells don't photosynthesize, do they?
My cells don't photosynthesize. No, I think plants are. That's amazing the way they do that.
That's my point. And no other animals have cells that photosynthesize, do they?
I don't know. There are some animals. I think there have been some studies about some animals that have green with some sort of photosynthesis in the animal world.
They absorb the algal cells and use them for that kind of symbiotic relationship, but their own cells don't photosynthesize. No.
They grab the cell because that cell is so complex that that does able to photosynthesis. That cell is so complicated; it had to have a designer. So the animal is able to capture that and use it for itself. That's amazing, isn't it? Almost makes you want to praise God. Makes me want to praise Him.
Gentlemen, let me jump in here. We could probably do a full debate between you two, just because we won't. Yeah, let's do it. That'll be fun. Andrew, stick around, as we will be doing probably about an hour open mic after this. I don't want it to go too much longer than 3 hours. Kent only has a few more minutes with us anyway, so let's give Brian.
Sorry, I meant to go shorter there. But
that's okay. That's okay. I want to give as much time as possible to at least those from the evolution side to go back and forth with Kent in impromptu debate. So that's good. It's been a good amount of time. Okay, Brian, good to have you back. How you doing? What's your question for Kent?
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. My question for Kent has to do with Haeckel's embryos. But before I get to that question, I have another one. You collect textbooks. Do you still do that all the way up to present dated textbooks?
A lot easier to do, but yeah, people send them to me once in a while. I was just looking today real quickly over my collection. I got a 2017 biology textbook. I was hoping I had some newer ones. If you can get some newer biology books, I'd love to see them. I guarantee they're still teaching the same lies. They have nothing else.
That's what I was going to ask.
I was in a debate with an atheist one time, and I mentioned all the lies in the textbooks. And this atheist said, well, folks, Kent Hovind's right. But he said, Hovind, what are you going to replace all this with? I said, folks, what we're trying very hard to not say is, if we took all the lies out of the textbooks, we wouldn't have anything left to support our theory. So you got to come up with evidence for my theory. That's what he was trying very hard not to say. There is no evidence for this evolution religion, none. It's not my job to find evidence for their theory. I point out This is wrong. The embryo doesn't have gill slits. Take it out of the book. Are any of you atheists on this channel tonight working on getting that out of the books? Or why are you so worried about shutting down my channel or correcting me on stuff? Are you worried at all about the lies in your textbooks? Just take the embryos. Proven wrong since 1874. Why don't you go march in front of your public school and say, take this page out of the book? Why don't you do that, you hypocrites? Go ahead.
Well, my question was on Haeckel's embryos. I was wondering if they were still teaching that in the present day textbooks, or have they started taking it out, or what?
Tell you what, you Google I Googled embryology 2.5 hours ago, and yes, they're still teaching it at many universities, probably all of them. Let's see, where's embryology? This is stuff that I just got tonight. I'd love to have some new textbooks. If you got some, send them to me. I'll put them in my collection. Embryology, here it is. This was right here. From this evening, Khan Academy is still teaching this. Evidence of evolution from embryology. They're still teaching it here and here and here. Yes, this is as of 3 hours ago. Is that updated enough for you evolutionists? Now look, this is 1991. What they're going to do, instead of saying, wow, they're still teaching it, they're going to say, look, Hovind showed a 1991 slide. Aren't you? Yes, I did, because they haven't changed it. They haven't changed it in 30 years, and it's a lie. Those are not gill slits. It's not evidence for evolution. Why don't some of you grow a pair and get out in front of your local university and boycott? Why don't you boycott the universities that are still teaching this? Let's see, here we go. Why don't you boycott them? Khan Academy. Say, look, why are you teaching this, guys? It's not true. Stop this. You won't do that. You're more worried about finding a contradiction in God's word than you are about correcting the science books. I know why, too. Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question. I interviewed Dr. Georgia Purdom recently, a geneticist and Answers in Genesis, and we actually talked about Haeckel's embryos. And they said that she said that some evolutionists would say that even though the drawings were fake, they still think the concept is true. What would you say to someone saying that?
I didn't understand part of your verbiage there.
I'm sorry. I was saying that Dr. Georgia Purdom said that some evolutionists would argue that even though the drawings are faked, the concept is true. What would you say to someone who is arguing that?
Okay, let's then start with step one. Let's get the drawings out of the book. Would you at least do that? Have any of you atheists spent any time going to your local school to see if they're still using Haeckel's drawings? Because if they are, this chart should be banned from public schools. This isn't
show
true.
Micro photographs now. They have micro photographs. They don't have to show drawings.
Is it true that the embryos of all the creatures look alike? Here are actual photographs. They're not micro photographs. You don't need a micro photograph to see Haeckel lied. He admitted he lied. He confessed it in the university court that tried him. University court, he said, a small percentage of my embryonic drawings are forgeries. Those, namely, for which the observed material is so incomplete or insufficient to fill in and can reconstruct by hypothesis and comparative synthesis. He admitted that he lied. So my question remains that you're avoiding, are any of you trying to get the drawings out of the books?
There aren't drawings. Modern textbooks have micro photographs of embryos, not drawings. I agree with you that they shouldn't have drawings in there, but that's why they have micro photographs of embryos now.
Are they still teaching the same concept that they are similar? Are they teaching with those micro photographs or that the embryos look similar at this stage when they don't? Are they still teaching this?
The reason that these look slightly different is because that they have things like a maternal yolk in the second embryo. But if you take that away, you'd see that they do look very similar on the second embryo.
You still believe this embryology is evidence for your religion, don't you, AJ?
It's not a religion. The Supreme Court ruled that it's not. No.
Okay. Call Donnie. Let's have a debate on that.
No, you're just wrong, though. I mean,
okay,
you can't define what a religion is.
You believe that these creatures, let's see, what do we have here? A fish, a salamander, a turtle, and a chicken, and a rabbit, and a human all have a common ancestor. Do you believe those creatures all have a common ancestor?
Now, the question was, are textbooks showing Haeckel's drawings? And the answer is no, they show microphotographs.
You really don't get it.
Well, that was the question that you asked. That's what you've been asking.
The textbooks don't have drawings. I guarantee this is from the textbook. Let's see. Where is this one used? I'll call it back up for you here. And you'll complain about the age because they didn't update my drawings every minute to keep you happy. Okay.
Well, you're asking about modern textbooks. If you show old textbooks that did have the drawings, then yeah, they're going to have them. But if you're asking, do modern textbooks, why aren't you guys protesting the textbooks in schools today to say take the drawings out? It's because they use microphotographs. And I actually agree with you that they shouldn't use drawings, but they don't.
So you're claiming tonight, let me write this down. AJ is claiming that the Haeckel's drawings are not used in the textbooks anymore. Is that your claim?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if they are, so then I agree they should be taken out.
If I prove you wrong,
will always be more
if I show you textbooks that are still using his exact chart, that they're using this chart that Haeckel made right here. Here's Haeckel's chart. This was used at the University of West Florida when I lived in Pensacola. That was Haeckel's drawings. They were using it at UWF just 20 years ago. If I find some universities or schools that are still using this chart or textbooks, you're saying you will help me get that out of the book. Is that what you just said?
I'm not sure how I would help to get something out of a textbook, but sure.
Oh, yay. Good. Okay.
I have another follow-up question. Are abortion clinics still using the Haeckel drawings?
They're still using the same concept that it's not a human yet. It's a fish. It's not a human. See, they say, just memorize the word farm, F-A-R-M. It goes from the fish to an amphibian to a reptile to a mammal. They say it goes through these stages in development because that's how creatures evolved. We started as a fish and became an amphibian, a reptile, mammal. That's the concept. Yes, abortion clinics are still using that. They'll say, lady, look, it's not a human yet. It's okay to abort your child. But if they want to have a double homicide to put somebody in trouble, then if a man shoots a pregnant woman in California, now they call it a double homicide. Well, why is it a double homicide? She had a baby inside of her. Oh, it's called hypocrisy. Okay. It's a human the instant it's conceived. A human being. It's not going to turn out to anything else. If you wish to believe,
do you have any evidence that they say that it's a fish and not a human yet? Do you have any evidence that abortion clinics say that?
I don't know. I don't go to abortion clinics.
So, but you're saying it. You're claiming it like it's a fact.
I'm claiming they have to tell the mother it's not a human. Do they say, now, ma'am, we're going to kill this human baby inside of you? Do they say that? No, they're trying to make money off of this. They got to pay for their Mercedes. So they tell
you have no evidence that they tell people that it's a fish inside of them, that it's okay to abort it because it's not a human, it's a fish.
Well,
you have no evidence of that.
I'll do some research on that.
I don't believe you, because you said in my last debate with you that you would research if the two different species had different information, and I don't think that you did that research.
AJ, I really have to work for a living. I work awfully hard down here, okay? But I'm gonna just for you. Do abortion clinics teach Haeckel's drawings or Haeckel the concept that it's not a human? Let me ask you a simple question here before I follow up. Is a woman who's pregnant for 6 months, is what's inside of her a human being?
Yeah, it's a fetus.
It's a fetus. It's a
developing human.
Is it a human? Is it considered human at 6 months development?
Yeah, it's a developing human fetus.
Should a woman be allowed to kill it if she wants to?
That's kind of a nebulously formed question. I mean, should she be able to just kill it for no reason? No, but if her life is in danger and it's medically necessary, she should have access to abortion, I do think, yeah. But just saying she should be able to kill it if she wants to is kind of dishonest way of asking the question.
Is that what most abortions are? Medically necessary? I agree. If the life of the mother is at stake, then better to lose one than both. Because if you lose the mother, you're going to lose both. I agree. But most abortions are not medically necessary for the life of the mother. They say, well, she's mentally, she can't handle another baby. Well, let's take one of the kids that's already born and kill that one instead, and let this new one come along.
So you agree, but you think abortion should be banned, though. So that would stop medically necessary abortions from happening.
Medically necessary abortions have always been fine. If it's really, truly medically necessary, and I don't mean mentally, oh, I can't handle another child. I mean, if the life of the mother is really at stake, she's going to die physically. If we don't do something, then yes, that would be the option. Just like if sometimes in a car accident, you can only get one person out. You do the best you can in those situations. I'd rather save one than neither one. So if it's truly a medical essential that the baby be killed to save the mother, but you need to admit, I'm sorry, ma'am, we're going to have to kill your child or you're going to die, and then you and the child are both going to die. So yes, but very few. Joseph, how many abortions are medically necessary for the life of the mother? Not the mental health of the mother, the life of the mother. It's very few.
Why is that the only time when it's okay?
Well, if you think a mother should be allowed to kill her baby before it's born, should the mother be allowed to kill the baby after it's born?
No.
What changed? That 10-minute trip down the birth canal changed, and now why don't we should she be allowed to abort it 5 minutes before it's born? Should that be legal?
No abortion happens 5 minutes before it's born. 90% of abortions happen before 21 weeks. Over 90%.
Should a mother be allowed to abort her baby 5 weeks before it's born?
No, and 90% of abortions happen before 21 weeks. So
okay,
it's just a dumb question.
Listen to my question.
I said no.
Should she be allowed to do it if she wants?
I said no.
Oh, good. Yeah,
and that very rarely ever happens, if ever.
Doesn't matter. Should she be allowed?
Yes, it does matter.
Well, under our current law, she would be allowed to kill it 5 minutes before it's born if she wanted.
No.
Do you agree?
Wrong.
That's what the law is now?
That is not what the law is.
At any time up until birth, the woman is allowed to abort her child. They don't do it. They could, though. Legally, they could.
No.
Okay.
That's why 90 to 95% of abortions happen before 21 weeks, which is before any nerve endings are formed in the baby or in the fetus, so it can't sense pain.
Oh, so
it has no sensory input.
So if we put somebody to sleep and then shoot him in the head, that's fine because they didn't feel anything.
No, that's just a dumb comparison.
That's the same logic.
No, it's not.
The question is it a human? At the moment of conception, it's got the 46 chromosomes and it's going to develop into a human unless somebody stops it. We could have a whole debate just on abortion, Donnie, if you'd like, but it's been 2 hours and I got other things to do here. But
thank you for answering my question, Kent. I appreciate it very much.
It resulted in some good debate, Brian. You did a good job, brother.
And Donnie, you're good at taking over for me, and I promised you 2 hours. Believe me, it's busy around here.
No worries. Kent, you did a great job. A lot of fun. 2 hours, session 9. We'll stick around. I have another session tomorrow. It's actually going to be me speaking. And so we're not going to go all night like we usually do. We'll go another hour, maybe 90 minutes max. So with that, Kent, thank you so much for 2 hours of your time. It's been a lot of fun. This has been an excellent session. I appreciate it. Go get some sleep. God bless, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, as Kent leaves, we will bring in one other person that I have backstage. And okay, that was good. That was fun. So we got a good mix at this point, at least 3 on the evolution side. We got 10 so far. So the link is pinned if anybody wants to join. We'll go another 60 minutes to 90 minutes, I'll say, in terms of an open mic. I do want to turn our conference this week into a DVD set or a DVD series. And so probably best to limit this session to about 3.5 hours max. Okay, so anybody want to jump in with any thoughts, ideas, counters, points, challenges, objections? Go ahead. It's a little more free for all at this point.
I have a question to get in here real quick for Atheist Junior. 1 second, hold on.
Can
I'm
you
gonna
guys
make
hear
a donation to Planned Parenthood in Kent's name.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's your question?
Atheist Junior, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I have a question for you, man.
Okay.
What do you believe happens to a human when they die?
I think that it's like very similar to before you were born. It's you have no memory of that, and it's just sort of like a black void that you have no memory of. I think that when a human dies, the brain is no longer getting any type of stimuli or any electrical signals in it. So there's no sense happening. There's no sight or any type of touch response. So you would basically just feel nothing. You would just go black. Like if you've seen the end of The Sopranos, spoiler alert.
Have you heard of the argument of Descartes, where he was trapped in a cabin and he started trying to figure out what he knew versus what he didn't know, and then at the end of it he came to the conclusion that the only thing that he can really rationalize is that he must exist in order to be even thinking about whether or not he existed. I think the famous statement is, "I think, therefore I am."
Yeah.
It doesn't that kind of lead you to believe that we aren't our body? We're not the chemical like connections or neurological connections between us and our brain. Rather, there is something on a higher spiritual or other realm per se outside of us. Because you could cut my hands off and my feet off, it'd still be me. Until even when I die and they put me in a grave, people would still agree that that body in the grave belonged to a particular person. So, I mean, do you believe that there's some outside essence operating in the body outside of like the neurological connections, or are we just simply a machine? Like once you unplug a computer, like it's done.
Yeah, I think that we are definitely linked to our bodies, because I don't think that you can have a mind without a brain. Like I said, if the brain loses oxygen for a long enough time period, it's going to basically the cells are going to die, and you're not going to have any electrical signals in the brain. So you're not going to have any sensory, any senses at all. So I think that we are linked to our bodies and our biology until we are able to swap brains or preserve them, download a human consciousness. I mean, it's a cool idea, but I don't think we're there yet. But getting into the idea of whether or not something is still you, I mean, if you've heard of the ship of Theseus, where replacing parts on a ship, if you replace all the parts on the ship, is it still the same ship? Well, our cells get replaced every few weeks. So at some point, I think it's about 7 years, you would have none of the same cells that you did 7 years before. And are you still the same person? I would say yes, but it is an interesting question.
I'm going to jump in real quick. A little bit of background noise on your end, Josh. Maybe there is an option in the settings where you can click reduce background noise. I'm curious to bring it back to the evolution topic. Anybody on the panel familiar with, because AJ, you brought up Tiktaalik. I do appreciate it. Interesting topic for sure. The topic of transitional forms. Anybody familiar, and including you, AJ, with the tetrapod foot tracks that were found in Poland, roughly, according to the uniformitarian model, roughly 40 million years prior to where Tiktaalik was found? This was after the discovery of Tiktaalik. So that would tell us that true tetrapods existed prior to Tiktaalik, which from the creation model would say, okay, we have overlap, intermingling, we have an interesting mosaic with Tiktaalik, but we've got tetrapods existing before Tiktaalik, with Tiktaalik. And so I don't know how that's a confirmed prediction if after the fact, Actually, before I continue, T-Rock, you're in Mickey Mouse mode, brother. But I know what fixes it is when you leave and come back, it refreshes. You should be good, brother. I'll keep the spot for you. Okay, so to wrap up my point, let me land the plane. Is it a confirmed prediction? If were they expected to find it? Okay, they actually ended up finding true tetrapods, at least in terms of the.
Are you referring to the 2010 footprints in Poland?
I believe so, because I don't think there was a.
Okay.
If it's in Poland, then I would say yes.
The same
Just
thing
because
has
you said
occurred
40
with,
million years, and I think it was closer to like 20-ish million years. So
Could have
it
been.
wasn't.
I don't have it in front of me. Could have been between 20 and 40 million.
the same thing occurred with birds. You know, evolutionists claimed for so very long that birds didn't evolve until 20 to 40 million years after dinosaurs went extinct. And then they find completely avian footprints in the geologic column, which are 20 million years older than the alleged evolutionary transitions to birds. So the same thing occurred with birds. Proof that true birds existed. And now we have proof that a whole variety of completely modern birds coexisted with dinosaurs in the Cretaceous. So, lapwings, beach runners, albatross, flamingos, owls, avocets, and a dozen other completely modern types of bird now known to coexist with dinosaurs. As for Tiktaalik, though, here's one of the things that kills the evolutionists' claim about Tiktaalik ambrosia. Its shoulder girdle was dermal, not endochondral. And what that means is that the shoulder bones, the scapula and whatnot, did not attach to the spine with cartilage and tendons. Okay, it wasn't. They were free-floating muscles in the body, just like the lobe fins of the lobe-finned fish. So, in other words, this creature couldn't have supported its weight out of water any better than a catfish. So, if it were transitional form to land-dwelling creatures, based on the evolutionist assumption, we should have evidence that its shoulder girdle is evolving from dermal to endochondral, just like the claim the evolutionists make that lobe-finned fishes evolved into amphibian tetrapods. Right?
But that wasn't the claim that was being made.
You get an endochondral shoulder girdles, so the organism can support its weight as it's moving onto land. Right? If you don't have evidence of the shoulder girdle becoming endochondral from dermal, you have no evidence that the creature is moving towards land. And so that's the case with Tiktaalik, unfortunately.
Oh, can I
but that
respond
wasn't
to
the claim being made, though, that it was transitional between aquatic and land animals.
But that is the claim of the evolutionists.
It was transitional between basal sarcopterygian fish and more derived tetrapods.
It's just not
it's not the same thing as aquatic and land animals. Many of the first tetrapods were actually fully aquatic still,
So what you're doing now is denying evolution theory in a way. It is allegedly.
No, I don't think so.
Please let me finish. It is allegedly a transitional form towards land-dwelling creatures.
What's your citation for that?
That's why when evolutionists produce their drawings, they put together Eusternepteron, Pandarixis, Tiktaalik, and Ichthyostega at the very end. Because Ichthyostega and Ichthyostegids are allegedly the final blow. They're the grand finale to the becoming a land-dwelling creature.
And do they live on land?
And Tiktaalik rosea is in that lineage. That is an example of the transition to fish. That is what evolutionists claim. Okay, I'm refuting that by explaining that its shoulder girdle is not dermal, endochondral, is dermal. Therefore, you have no evidence that the creature is in any way transitional towards land, which is the claim of
and those fossils, Ichthyostega and Acanthostega, did they live on land?
It can't. No. Ichthyostega, yes. It was amphibious.
No, they were both mostly still aquatic.
Amphibious.
Their limb bones show that.
It was amphibious.
So no, they were not fully terrestrial, as you're claiming.
I didn't say they were fully terrestrial. It was amphibious.
You
Ichthyosteigids.
said they were the final blow.
The
You
same
said they were
thing
the
as land
final blow.
dwelling.
to
Right.
Right, because they're the last creature in the step to becoming land.
But you
dwelling.
just said they were amphibious.
No, you're strawmanning what I'm saying. So, in the end, you have a series of creatures that are moving towards land-dwelling creatures. At the end of it is the last one, right? The next one is a land-dwelling creature, right?
Which one?
That's where the question mark is. Which one is that, right? But in this series of moving towards land, ichthyosteigids are the last one. From ichthyosteigids to land. Okay, so
it's
that's
not
what
that
I'm
hard of a
okay?
transition.
But Tiktaalik rosea can't be. It doesn't show evidence of this because its shoulder girdle is dermal.
That's not what transitional means. That's not what it ever meant.
You would have to have
one structure.
endochondral. You would have to have endochondral shoulder girdles to be a land-dwelling creature.
But it being transitional doesn't hinge on that one thing.
Well, if you don't have evidence of the development of the endochondral shoulder girdles, you don't have any evidence that they were becoming.
It's a morphological.
So let me finish my
transition, not an
statement without you
environmental
talking over me.
transition.
Let me finish my words without you talking over me. Okay, there's time for you to speak. Atheists do this all the time when they get desperate. They start endlessly talking over.
Okay, make your point then.
Okay. So without evidence of if shoulder girdles never become endochondral, you never get land-dwelling creatures from creatures which have dermal and shoulder girdle. See, that's the point. And so it doesn't support the theory of evolution as an example of transition because it can't support its weight out of water any better than a catfish. And that's the point I was making, and it's a correct point.
And the later fossils in that transition, did they have the endochronal?
They would have had
tissue?
to, but they don't exist either.
I mean, you just mentioned them, Acanthostega and Apheostega. Did they have those tissues or not?
No.
Yes or no?
No. Pandarixis.
No.
But that's not a fisher-pod anyway. That's probably nothing more than a giant salamander. They're anatomically the same.
Okay, are we talking about Pandoricphes or are we talking about Acanthostega and the Ichthyosteigids?
You're trying very hard to strawman everything I say. But
No,
I'm not going to let you do that.
What you're saying.
I'm just pointing out, my point is that Tiktaalik rosea's shoulder girdle is dermal, not endochondral. Therefore, it can't have supported its weight out of water any better than a catfish.
Okay.
And it being not a transitional form does not follow from that.
That means it's useless as a transitional form to land-dwelling creatures.
That's not what transitional means.
Yeah, being transitional is based on multiple structures, not just one.
I understand that, but this alone just kills the idea. That's all there is to that. Without it, it's nothing more than a lobe-finned fish.
This is like saying Basilosaurus was not a transitional whale because it already lived in the ocean.
No,
it's transitional morphologically, not environmental transition.
It's just a lobe-finned fish. If you go to your Museum of Natural History in your city, if you live in a city with more than 200,000 people, and you have a Museum of Natural History, you go to the fish tanks, you'll see a creature that looks almost identical to it. The biggest difference is the distance between the eyes. It's just a fish.
I love this argument as an argument against evolution.
What fish are you talking about specifically? Be specific here.
I don't recall the name of the species.
Oh, well, that's helpful. Okay.
Well, you can't change the fact that Tiktaalik's shoulder girdle is dermal, not endochondral. That you can't change.
How about this? Can you define what a transitional form is in the evolutionary literature for me?
Evolutionists do this a lot. They play this definition game. They want to make it look like if you can't give me the exact definition provided by evolutionary biologists for everything, you don't know what you're talking about, therefore you're wrong.
That's not what I was claiming.
And that's what you're trying to do. And I don't play
No, that's not what I was trying to do.
Okay. So what you need to do is tell us how Tiktaalik can be transitional from fish to land.
So here's what I was trying to do. If you're claiming that you understand
without having
evolution,
an endochondral shoulder girdle, can you do that? Please?
Okay, can I speak now?
Well, you started talking over me. Can you do that?
Can I do what? Show that.
Show us that Tiktaalik rosea is a transitional towards land living amphibious.
No, I don't need to because that's not what a transitional form means.
Without it having an endochondral shoulder girdle.
I don't need to. That's not what transitional
Okay.
means.
You don't need to. Okay. All right. Great.
Can I interrupt?
So you're saying transition from dermal to endochondral shoulder girdles, it doesn't need to happen for fish to
That's not what I
to
said.
produce.
That's not what I said.
Okay. Well, you're getting confused, I think.
If you think that, what do you want to say? Apologize.
Apologetics. You wanted to jump in here? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in for a second. A transitional form is an intermediate form. When we talk about transitional forms, what we're talking about is in between major groups of animals. That's what's really over. Because young Earth creationists do agree with speciation and things like that.
Yeah, everybody
variations
understands.
within a kind. Like, for example, we're talking about transitional forms, like, and you're right, Andrew, that it is a chain of because that's ultimately what's missing. The whole chain is missing, and that's the reason why we pointed out and stuff like that. And that would be the issue, because it wouldn't be just one. It wouldn't just be one thing that is missing. It'd be the whole chain that's missing.
Correct. You need to have
a
bunch of fossils to confirm that prediction. Yeah, I would say we have them, but you'd probably disagree on.
I would disagree, definitely.
I'd like to make another comment about the Haeckel's drawings debacle. So what the evolutionists have done is taken different images of these same types of living things and compared them instead of Haeckel's drawings. But the basics of the claim is the same. The interesting thing is, during development, these tissues, cell specialization creates what are called mesenchymal tissues. And from mesenchymal tissues develop the features. Right, and there's a genetic pathway from cell specialization, complex genetic information that tells the mesenchymal tissues how to organize cells and develop more cells to become a bone or a tendon or something else. Right, that's the process. Okay, so the interesting thing is the mesenchymal tissues that create these gill arches in these creatures that are allegedly show evidence of evolutionary ancestry and commonality with man don't develop the same feature in human being as they do the creature in which we see the gill arches. These alleged gill arches in human beings during fetal development are not gill arches. They have a different mesenchymal tissue that creates them. It's not the same one. And it has a different genetic pathway towards development, not the same one. Now, the evolutionist claim is that genes become modified and preserved by natural selection. Continuous modifying the genes. This is how the birds develop wings from the legs of reptiles, right? The genes that make the legs in reptiles get modified by mutations. So they're a little bit more like a wing and a little less like a leg, and this happens successively, right? Mutations that transform the feature get preserved by natural selection, and this process goes on and on until the genes are rewritten and new genes are added by duplication and subsequent mutation to build the transition, the limb of a frog or a reptile rather, into the wing of a bird. The same would be true here with the gill arches, the alleged gill arches, right? The gill arches, the mesenchymal tissues, the cell, the genetic information that specializes all this has to be modified by successive mutations and preserved repeatedly over and over and over until these develop from the gill arch into the voice box or the jaw of a human being and the gills of a fish, right? But the problem is they're not the same genes. And they're not located in the same genome in the some loci in the genome, and they have a different genetic developmental pathway. So they're not even the same tissues. Their only different thing is they have a similar appearance at a particular stage in development in one or another. That's all. And based on nothing more than visual similarity is the claim. Evolutionists are trying to keep this fake claim of Haeckel alive. Kenneth Miller of Brown University is doing it. He pushes it very heavily in the textbooks that he writes. Right? But the problem is, like I said, different mesenchymal tissue, different genetic pathway toward development because they're different features. They never were related. That's the evidence today. If they were related, they should be produced by the same genetic pathway, which produces the same mesenchymal tissues. but they're not. Therefore, they're not related.
I've got a couple questions I was going to ask Andrew. Also, an observation, Andrew. Earlier, when you were talking to Dr. Kent Hovind, you guys were talking about 3 and 4 chambered hearts, and I believe you made the comment that you would not expect an animal with a 3 chambered heart to evolve into an animal with a 4 chambered heart in a single generation, correct?
Yeah, not a single generation.
So, right. So what I found interesting was very, very shortly after that, you gave an example of I believe you were talking about some type of lungfish or a lobe-fin fish.
I'm not sure.
I thought it was. I may be mistaken, but I thought it was some aquatic animal like that. Anyway, what I thought was interesting about your argument there was that the example you did give, you gave a developmental argument.
I was talking about the anglerfish lure. Is that what you were referring to?
The anglerfish.
Yeah, anglerfish. Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
And can you repeat what you said about that?
Yeah, so I was just talking about how when you observe anglerfish embryos develop initially, the lure is one of the dorsal fin rays, and then as development progresses, it migrates anteriorly up toward the eyes and the head region and develops into the bioluminescent lure. So I was just using that as an example of how one structure could become modified for a different purpose.
Sure, but so I just thought that was an amazing, and I'll just be honest with you, Andrew. I thought that was an amazing contradiction of logic that you gave there with that example, because in one sentence you said you can't develop from a 3 to a 4 chambered heart in a single generation, and then in another sentence you said inside of a single lifespan you can make significant changes like that.
Well, I guess that's true. Yeah, I guess I was referring more for the anglerfish in terms of proof of concept in terms of embryology, whereas the 4 chambered heart, I was thinking, I thought Kent was more asking along the lines of a mutation producing that change.
Well, I mean, okay, technical details of evolution aside for a second, the point is that if evolution were possible, your anglerfish example, and we can give other much more familiar examples to the average person, tadpoles, life cycle of a frog, they change drastically in a single lifetime. And it's because biology happens at that speed. They literally go through major morphological changes inside of a single life cycle with or without additional reproduction. And so because those things are possible, there is no logical reason why an animal can't give birth to have offspring with an additional chamber in their heart. And Taylor Kay made a really interesting point in the comments. She said something to the effect that it seems like the only possible way to evolve from 3 to 4 chambers is to do it in a single generation. Otherwise, you have to basically say, is there an animal out there with 3.5 chambers or 3.00001 chambers?
Have a sort of 3-chambered, sort of 4-chambered heart. The valves separating them are they're not complete separation.
But now we're back to your anglerfish example. Those types of internal organ changes can happen so quick inside of a single lifetime. Why can't the crocodile give birth to a offspring with a full additional chamber?
Well, because usually, like, I guess maybe a subtle change like that, usually the more I want to say it's the more it's usually a structure. If you change it in a non-subtle way like that, it's usually going to harm it more so than then actually change it and the organism survives. Like, I think we'd both agree with that.
Well, I mean, conceptually, I understand what you're saying, but you're kind of talking in purely hypothetical terms, because alligators, the interesting thing about alligators is that they are semi-aquatic, right? They can function very well in water, at least for periods of time, and they can also function on land for relatively extended periods of time. And so if there were a candidate out there that could do such a thing, an alligator would be it, because it could just have offspring with 4-chambered hearts and just send them on their merry way on dry land.
Are you saying having a 4-chambered heart is correlated with terrestrial life? Or I'm not sure exactly what the point.
No, what I'm really saying is that your argument is taking strictly a hypothetical approach with no real world observation to endorse it. So I'll tell you exactly why I think 3-chambered heart organisms don't have offspring with 4-chambered hearts. It's because start back at the cellular level, your DNA has self-repair mechanisms in it, and those self-repair mechanisms literally keep the DNA the way it's supposed to be, to the extent that it's physically possible. But because they have self-repair mechanisms in the DNA, in the genome itself, the self-repair mechanism can also be broken and quit functioning. And that's exactly why, for example, cancer proliferates. It's because self-repair mechanisms are broken. But going from the genetic level all the way up to the macro, to the organism level, birds want to be birds. They don't want to be something else. They have to function as birds. They're designed to stay as birds, and that's why they don't give rise to offspring. My real point in all of that is that your anglerfish example is a prime example of how fast it can happen. It literally can happen that fast, because it does happen in reptiles, in fish, in butterflies. It happens in thousands and upon thousands of species of animals on the planet. It happens so fast that there is no logical reason why, in evolutionary theory, that you can't have punctuated equilibrium.
But the theory,
well, that's not the same thing as punctuated equilibrium. But I will. Yes, it is possible that those kinds of rapid changes can happen. In fact, you often see that in speciation with, for example, you get changes in what's called polyploidy. So you can have sudden rapid changes in morphology like that. I think for
like
animals,
strawberries.
Exactly. Yeah, it's for animals, it's a little bit different. I'm not sure the exact reasons why, but animals seem to be a bit more vulnerable or kind of stringent in very large changes like that. I think, so probably some large changes like that could happen rapidly some of the time, but I think usually, and this is what we see in natural occurring populations, that the changes are usually subtle, and those are the ones that accumulate over time.
Well, see, that's what I think is the bait and switch of evolution, because what the theory basically is predicated on deep time and very slow processes. So the population geneticists look at mutation rates. What they specifically look at is the protein coding regions in the genome, a very small percentage of the total genome. And it's got a very slow mutation rate. But what they don't look at is the like the uniparentally inherited DNA. And that's because it mutates at a much faster rate. And so your bait and switch is that you want these things to happen only by the very slow changes, but yet in the real world, they do happen fast, and it's not because of changes in the protein coding genes at all.
Yeah, it's often regulatory changes, yeah.
The idea of the evolution of the anglerfish's lure is truly nonsensical. It just can't be supported in any way. It couldn't be a ray fin that migrated from the fin to the center of the head. That idea is nonsensical. Natural selection is going to say you're out of it. So well, let me finish. And it's not plausibly either that a genetic mutation, like we see in fruit flies in the laboratory, where an eyeball or antenna or leg appears where an eyeball is supposed to be. So Hox gene mix-up that creates polyploidy feature, but in the wrong location, and then preserved by natural selection for a couple of reasons. This is implausible. Firstly, natural selection actually works against evolution theory, not for it. This is a shocking revelation from most evolutionists, but it's the truth. And I'm explaining to you exactly why that we know that's true. So if random mutation moved around some information in the DNA that caused a ray fin to appear in the middle of the head, that's a possible thing. That's a mutation that could actually occur. But what would happen, and what we appear happen in the lab, is that organisms revert to wild type. These kinds of deformities are weeded out by natural selection. Natural selection says, uh-oh, you're not supposed to be there. You're not a positive thing. You're a negative thing. I'm going to get rid of you. And that organism doesn't pass on its genes. See, and that's what happens to deformities. They disappear. Natural selection works against the idea of evolution, not for it. So
yes, the most extreme deformities like that, yes.
If this deformity appears, firstly, in its initial stage, according to evolutionism, it would not be a fully formed lure, because it requires, firstly, it's going to require muscles so that the thing can jiggle the thing and make it appear to be alive. That's when it's going to need, and it's going to need new nerves, new muscles and tendons to make that thing be able to do its little dance. Secondly, it's not going to have the lure thing, the squiggly thing at the end that looks like a little aquatic creature that's dancing around in the water, because it would have to develop incrementally, right? Everything is incremental, right, in evolution. So it wouldn't be, as it at first appeared, a complete angler lure. It would have to be only in part. So it's an appendage, a skinny appendage sticking out of the head that doesn't have muscles. It's just sticking out of the head. Natural selection says you're a deformity, get rid of it. There is no process in evolution and in biology which allows for a feature to pop into existence by genetic mutation to a Hox gene that makes it appear in the anatomy of the creature in a place where it's not supposed to be, and then successive mutations modify it to give it functions, add new things, amazing things like new muscles, new tendons, cartilage, and things at the end of it. And the stinger in the tail of a scorpion is a perfect example. You have a creature that's an antecedent to the scorpion. It has a tail, but it doesn't have the sac that holds the venom, and it doesn't have the nerves that operate the muscles that squeeze that thing to excrete the poison. It doesn't have the keratin in syringe tip at the end either. It doesn't have the valve that stays closed until the poison needs to be
a lot of arachnids don't have those things.
So
they just have tail abdomens like that.
Each one of those things have to develop incrementally for the stinger in the tail of a scorpion to evolve, right? That's not plausible any more than the anglerfish's lure coming into being by random mutation.
Wait, you don't think like using that tail to stab prey with? I mean, like, sure, maybe not with venom inside of it, but that would still help subdue the prey more than just using a whip-like tail, for example.
No, because when we observe mutations affect the anatomy of creatures in the laboratory and observe testable, repeatable examples, grotesque mutations are weeded out and the creature always reverts to wild type. That's what happens in nature, too.
Well, yeah, so the most extreme examples like that.
Well, evolutionism is the extreme example. It's a fantasy. It's an extreme example of natural selection doing exactly the opposite of what we observe it doing.
Hey, Nephilim, do you mind if I ask a question in here? Just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question for any evolutionist. I usually people, they focus on like the physical like characteristics that occur during evolution. Like, you know, how he's talking about how the stinger needs to develop certain nerves so that it could release the venom. But how do you guys, as evolutionists, explain the evolution of consciousness and things like emotions? Like, how did a strawberry evolve into a living organism that now is able to like have emotions?
Well, plants didn't evolve into animals, including conscious animals. But as for the evolution of consciousness itself, I have no idea. That's not something I'm terribly familiar with.
Nephilium, can I add something to what you said?
Yes, please.
That's fair. Thank you.
Also, a natural selection is opposite, like you said, it's opposite of evolution. That's absolutely true. And in addition to that, it's actually a loss of information because you actually lose information in the genome. Like what you were saying, you actually lose that information when you weed out things because of the lack of survivability. Then you actually lose the information of the genome. So that's the opposite of evolution. You need to gain information, that lose it.
Can I follow up on something? So like
random mutations cannot create complex, specified, prescriptive, functional, algorithmic, linguistically organized semiotic language. Impossible. Which is the 20th century's knife to the heart evidence against evolution. Evolution is scientifically impossible. We know that today because 20th century biology proved that DNA is a four-dimensional, strand-hopping, self-correcting, forward and reverse reading package of prescriptive functional information that operates with algorithms, possesses the linguistic properties of phonetics, semantics, punctuation, syntax, grammar, apodetics, and semiotics. And since those things can only come into being by mental processes, not material ones like chemistry and mutations, evolution theory cannot be true. It was disproved by 20th century biology. Evolutionists are still clinging to it. It's an 18th century myth. Charles Darwin tried to turn into a scientific theory in the 19th century, but 20th century biology put the knife into it and nailed the coffin shut.
I got a question for Andrew.
Sure.
And then I also have another question for both Mitchell and Donnie. Andrew, speciation. So evolution is predicated on speciation happening over vast periods of time, right?
Yeah, but more or less, yeah.
So if we take two modern species that coexist on the planet today, that are I'll say closely related, like a lion and a tiger, they're two different species, right? You agree they're two different species, right?
Yeah, lion and tiger.
And so I guess my question for you is, do you consider the differences between lions and tigers to be superficial or very profound?
Like in terms of the skin color versus the skeleton, or I'm not sure
like
exactly.
So I guess in a sense a way to quantify it is like, how do you think it's a very simple, easy process? Let's just take the color of their fur, for example, and I'm thinking of like specifically like Bengal tigers in Asia, where they've got black and orange stripes with white stripes, right? Whereas the African lion has almost purely golden or brown fur, right? So the color change, do you consider that to be something very superficial, and as in it's a real easy change that could happen very quickly, or do you think that's a change that by necessity has to happen very slowly?
That I think would be a very relatively easy change to happen, because we see in, for example, lab populations, like someone earlier mentioned, fruit flies, the wing color patterns can change pretty quickly. So that I think is a relatively easy change.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, because I totally agree with you, and I'll give another example that everybody might be able to resonate a little bit with. If you've followed any of the genetics studies out there in lab mice, beta carotene, like you can feed beta carotene in like concentrated amounts to mice, and it'll change their fur color. And I don't know if you knew that or not, but I've personally made this argument multiple times on Standing for Truth, that your genetic flexibility is dependent on environmental chemistry, right? And so I guess what all that means to me is whenever you say, yes, it's a relatively superficial change that can happen kind of quick and easy, I personally find it hard to believe that evolutionists think we cannot get, dozens of species of a particular animal in 4,000 years. If that's all it takes, they live in a separate place and they've got different fur color, and maybe they've got
well maybe not like maybe for dozens of species, but like at the speciation rates occurring today that we can observe, like in finches or fruit fly populations or the like, for groups that are a lot more diverse than that, with more than a couple dozen species, like hundreds or thousands, etc., then no, you can't get that in 4,000 years.
Can you give an example of one with hundreds of species or thousands of species?
Like, what would you say? All bees or ants, or let's say ants. Do you think all ants are a single kind?
I gotta laugh. I'm sorry. I seriously gotta laugh because this is one of those things that I think most evolutionists completely miss the most profound, basic details of the creation account. We went from talking about lions and tigers to bees. So,
well, not only that,
real quick though. No, I did, but there's a point to me saying this though, because bees, in the cat example, there are literally only 2 cats on the ark, and we only have how many? What?
Well,
20,
okay, how about frogs then?
We don't know that. It presumes that God only created one kind of ant. See, this is something the evolutionist can't know and the creationist doesn't actually know either.
But one thing
it could be, for example, that God created 20 different kinds of bird, and from those 20 kinds of bird, you have tens of thousands of varieties. We call them species. See, that is very possible. God could have produced 100 different kinds of bird. And from those 100, we get 20,000.
Seems like you have no idea which is a kind versus another. Like how many kinds there are total.
Well, evolutionists don't know how many species there are either. It's called the species problem. Evolutionists,
that's because evolution happens. Species are gradients.
Please don't constantly talk over it. Evolutionists are unable to accurately define what constitutes a species. It's called the species problem. But what we do observe is morphology can change relatively quickly. But what we don't have evidence of is anatomical change or even a genetic pathway to that. And that you got to have for evolution.
Okay, how are you defining anatomical change then?
Well, what is anatomy? Anatomy is what
I know what anatomy means. What
okay. Well, then what would anatomical?
What's your criterion for what would count as an anatomical change here? Just like give me a hypothetical example.
A stinger appearing in the tail of a scorpion where the antecedent didn't possess it. That's anatomy. You have new anatomical features. You have a stinger sac. You have new muscles, new nerves. You have a keratin stinger tip that didn't exist.
Well,
you have a valve.
as I've already explained, though, evolution doesn't usually produce things de novo.
Usually I didn't say de novo. They would have to develop over time, right? But that's anatomical difference, right?
Evolution requires they came from pre-existing structures. They weren't new anatomical structures.
Well, eventually they are.
Like they were extensions from the abdomen, for example, in scorpions.
Well, no, you're just saying that it has to develop incrementally. That's all you're saying.
Well, start with that. Scorpion. What's the antecedent? That's a good one, Neff. What's the antecedent to a scorpion with a stinger? Because that would be an anatomical versus more morphological change.
Exactly. It really would.
Well, look, for example, at certain types of arachnids like the whiptail scorpions. I forget the specific clade name. They have, like the name suggests, whip-like tails. They're not. They're still extensions of the abdomen. So that's kind of the first stage. You have these extensions of the abdomen, and then from that, I don't know. I'm just coming up with a logical pathway or a plausible pathway here. You would have, say, changes in the regulatory timing of where certain tissues or certain proteins in the tissues are expressed versus in other places. So you could have it so that part of what were you saying that stinger was made of, a certain type of keratinized tissue. So if that was expressed in one part of the body, that could now be expressed more toward the abdomen. So
yeah,
like
but we just don't have
that would be the
transitions.
same as like how the turtle shell developed, for example.
Well, that's all theory. We don't have the physical examples. That's the problem. We don't have
Right,
the
but that's a
examples to
plausible
show
pathway. You asked for a plausible pathway of how that could have
it
developed.
happens. Without evidence, you can't claim it's taken place. No physical evidence.
I never
taken
said it.
place.
It took place that way.
And-
You asked if it was
and-
possible that could have happened that way. I'm saying it.
Brian,
Yeah, I
did you
don't
have
think that's
something you wanted to
possible.
bring up before you duck out?
What is the plausibility of mutation developing those features in the tail of a scorpion from where they didn't exist? I would
I
say
just gave
genetics
a
don't support that.
possible pathway. That shows
Hey,
it's
guys,
not
hey-
impossible. That doesn't
hey,
show
guys,
it happened that way.
Real quick,
You
Brian.
gave me an
Brian's-
idea. You didn't give me a genetic pathway.
Guys, real
Sorry, what
quick,
you said,
Brian
Hero.
wants to duck out here pretty
Right.
soon. So I was gonna.
Sorry,
see if he
I
wanted to
hogged
bring
up
something
too
up.
much of the time. I apologize. I'll shut up for now.
Okay, it's
Andrew,
good.
you're the lone evolutionist here, so that's okay.
I guess
Yeah,
so.
it's understandable you're going to take up a lot of time. Brian, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
thanks for the discussion. I enjoyed it. It's been a great conversation, but I'm getting tired. So I'm going to go ahead and leave.
Thanks for
Thanks,
sticking with
Andrew,
us,
for
brother.
being such a good sport. I noticed about 10, 15 minutes ago, you're surrounded.
Yeah,
Literally, you're in the middle, surrounded by us creationists.
He's
Yeah,
in a den of sheep.
All right. But anyway,
yeah. I appreciate the discussion and thanks for letting me.
all right, I'll see y'all later. All right, bye.
Bye, Brian.
Take care.
Okay, Andrew, I've got another follow-up question for you, and then I was gonna switch real quick.
I'm getting
for-
pretty tired, like
for
Brian
Mitchell's
too.
sake.
So I'll have to head out
Yeah.
once this is done.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Get a
ask
pot of
you
coffee going, Andrew. And
about
Andrew, I know
species-
you and I will probably want to set up our own separate genetic entropy discussion. I'm sure you.
Yeah, that should be interesting. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Hey, Andrew, I'm putting a link to an article I wrote years ago about this Fisher pod evolutionary transitional stuff. I would you might want to take a look at it. I would appreciate it if you'd click that, and when you find time, you save the link when you got an hour to kill or something. Just someday read
Is it
that
this
and
one
see-
in the private chat up
and see-
above here a little bit?
Yes, just see what you think of it if you would.
Okay.
Sometime.
Let me-
So, Andrew, real quick rabbit trail for you on speciation rates, because
Okay.
we're talking about evolution and how changes come about, and so I was pointing out, the utter speed with which changes can come about. But would you agree that whenever populations divide into smaller populations, that the speciation rate can increase?
So you'd be talking so you said up larger population dividing into two smaller populations with the speciation rate increase. That was your question.
Yeah. And let's not make any assumptions about what larger population means. I'm not implying we're going from 10,000 to 100. By larger, I mean very generically. It's X number one day, and then 95%
Sure,
of X
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, I think maybe in some sense, because in a smaller population, of course, genetic drift is going to act more effectively than selection, so that could cause some variants that were previously there to fixate more rapidly due to drift, and so that could cause more rapid, like the founder effect, for example, that can lead to speciation in some circumstances if the population and the environmental conditions are just right. So yeah, I think totally, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that was one of the points, though. With smaller populations, then you would also agree that mutations would fix much faster, right?
Yes.
So I guess when you look at the creation model, and here's one of the very reasons that I'm just like, it's jaw-dropping, mind-numbing that evolutionists argue against the speciation rates proposed by creationists, because our whole model starts with small populations, specifically, and here's the key point, in an empty earth. And so if you have two rabbits coming off the ark, how fast do rabbits reproduce? And how big is the earth, and how much room is there for the populations to just sit there and continuously break out into, small sets of, I mean, pick a number, 5, 10, 20, whatever. But I mean, do you not see that is a recipe for very rapid speciation?
Well, I mean, sure, but until we could like estimate the specific speciation rates, because obviously now we can only observe speciation rates in a non-empty world, the one you're proposing.
But what we talked about earlier is a really good estimation of the speciation rates. We're talking about, you can literally feed an animal a different diet and change their fur color, and you can literally.
That's not necessarily speciation. That could be due to some.
No, hear me. I understand. Hear me out though, because some species, two different species, the changes are even more superficial than the lion and tiger example. And
Sure.
so what I'm saying is, you change their diet. That doesn't take any time at all, right? And then you separate them by 10 miles. Is 10 miles enough to keep two rabbits from interbreeding? Sure. How long does it take to separate animals by enough distance to keep them from interbreeding? It takes no time at all. So you can make a very crude estimate that speciation can happen very quickly if they've got room to radiate and they've got differences in food supply and other environmental differences.
Right. I'm just saying, yeah, you could come up with an argument like that. I'm just saying, until the necessary calculations or estimations are made, seeing what the speciation rates would be like in that context, and seeing could that produce all the species we see today, or at least the ones that we have archaeological evidence for being present at that time in just a couple hundred or 1,000 years or so on.
So that kind of leads to a question I was going to ask you earlier. How many tiktaalik fossils have been found to date? Individual what's the word you'd use?
Specimens?
Yeah, individual specimens, unique specimens.
I don't know the specific number, but I would guess at least several of them. Probably not too many.
Like 8, 10, 12 maybe?
I don't,
Less,
probably not that
likely.
much. I would just say a few.
Probably two or three is all I think it is.
Well, maybe, but my point though is it doesn't matter to me if it's 2 or 200, because the point is that in evolution theory, you're supposed to have this very long time for mutations to fix in a population, but the whole theory is also predicated on there always being, these populations of 8 or 10,000, 20,000, whatever. But we've got no hint whatsoever that a unified population of 20,000 tiktaaliks existed simultaneously. The only evidence you have is that there's a small population.
Well, no, not necessarily, because due to the vagaries of fossilization, that could just as easily be due to the bias and preservation. Like, so not all tiktaalik are going to get fossilized.
Understood, but now you're saying that because there's no fossils, we can still logically infer there had to have been huge populations of them.
Not necessarily huge populations. Like, obviously we can't estimate the exact population size, but obviously there were more than a couple hundred individuals, because natural populations today, if they get below a certain number of individuals, they go into what's called an extinction vortex due to inbreeding and such. So,
but if you're going to stick to real world examples and real world logic, aquatic animals tend to far outnumber in terms of raw population numbers land animals. But we've got more theropod fossils than we do tiktaalik fossils.
Well, yeah, but theropod as a group is a lot larger than a single species of tiktaalik.
Pick a subset of them. We've got more T-Rex fossils than we do tiktaalik.
Well, to be fair, T-Rex was discovered several decades ago. Tiktaalik was only discovered like a couple decades ago, so we've had more time to find T-Rex fossils.
So I got a question for Donnie and perhaps Mitchell, because Mitchell was commenting. Mitchell, and I apologize. I'm assuming you're male, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Okay. Mitchell was saying in the chat over here in the private chat that he's a mathematician, which I think is great and interesting. But I was asking him about what his perception of Mendel's accountant was. And so, Donnie, my question for you is, have you looked at any of the softwares that the mainstream or secular scientists use for population genetics?
I've seen some of the ones that Zach Hancock has put forth as being superior, in his opinion, to Mendel's accountant, but I haven't actually run any sophisticated analyses or simulations of them.
So the reason I'm asking is because in the conversation between Zach and Paul Price,
right,
Zach was bringing up some of the mathematics behind population genetics theory, and but he was doing some very simple number crunching or formulations that he was proposing, which doesn't even remotely approach the actual softwares like Mendel's accountant. And so I guess my observation, my question is, do you think that the evolutionists are approaching mutation, accumulation, fixation, so on and so forth, in a significantly different manner than what Mendel's accountant does?
I don't think it's as user specific. I could be wrong because I haven't run my own simulations on them yet, but I don't think they're as user specific as Mendel's accountant, where you can specify so many different parameters and therefore get biologically real or biologically unrealistic results. And whenever right, go ahead, T-Rex.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I was going, because the in Mendel's accountant, you can set so many different parameters, but I think, and I'm asking you because I thought perhaps you would know more than I do, because I honestly don't know much at all about the secular, the mainstream approach mathematically to what Mendel's accountant is doing. But my personal impression is that in Mendel's accountant, it literally tracks specific mutations if you want it to.
Right.
Is that your?
Yep. You can, it's user specific. So you can basically input whatever settings you want, mutation distribution, population size, and you can watch how this artificial population basically changes.
Let me put a finer point on it and be a little more specific.
Sure.
In Mendel's accountant, if you say that a mutation has occurred at the loci XYZ, the software literally tracks where that mutation is, both in the population. Is essentially it tracks exactly where that mutation exists, how many members in the population it exists in, and it literally follows every single mutation that's induced, and knows, and the math in the background is tracking every mutation and every organism or every member in the population where it's at.
I believe so. And I know Dr. Rob Carter, he's employing some novel simulations. I saw him talking about it the other day in terms, I think, population genetics wise. So it's always improving. They're always running new simulations. So I'm skeptical that the conventional side are running as sophisticated of analyses as you could do on Mendel's. I'm suspicious of that.
One of the real problems for this whole idea of tracking mutations and the evolutionists' models of mutation and population, and most evolutionary biologists have moved to Hancock's model today because they agree that, for example, the plume in a peacock, it needs to not just be beautiful but functional in some way, and so Hancock's ideas are prominent today. But The problem is that mutations simply don't do. We have no reason to believe mutations do what the evolutionists claim they do, that they build upon each other. These random damage events to the complex information of the DNA build new information that codes for new features or rearranges existing types of tissues to a new anatomical feature that has biomechanical functions that are novel. We don't have any reason to believe that mutations do this. We have 90 years of studying mutation, almost 90 years, a million studies in mutations since the 1930s, and the journey is in. Mutations are damage. They cause damage, deformities, weakness, death. They don't build, design fantastic structures in the anatomy of living things. And all these evolutionists' models and Mendel's accountant and everything, and Hancock's ideas, all these ideas are predicated on the idea, the false idea that can't be supported by science. The mutations are actually designers instead of destroyers. That's the big issue for the evolutionary biologist in the 20th century about mutation, is that we have 90 years of history of showing that mutations cause weakness, deformity, and death, and zero that they introduce anatomical novelty into the body plans of the creatures. And so evolutionists are still coming up, empty-handed.
They're destroyers and not creators. And there's a new paper that came out. Andrew, feel free to speak to this. 2023. For 30 years, they've been studying, let's see, community-wide genome sequencing reveals 30 years of Darwin's finch evolution. Obviously, they've been studying it for a lot longer than that. But what they've discovered is, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Neff, we see a lot of amazing change in terms of morphology because animals are designed with incredible amounts of morphological adaptability built in. And so we're seeing in real time new species. We're seeing new species of Darwin's finch, but all we get are morphological changes. We don't get anatomical changes. But what they revealed is rapid speciation. And on a genetic level, what's happening is, or I should say, are shifts in heterozygosity, so more allelic variability, to homozygosity, so less allelic variability. And so we're getting shifts in available variability. We're getting new variations, but overall, it's a downhill process. Species eventually hit walls, they hit barriers. There's a limit to the change that's possible. But the whole point is, this study here is revealing rapid speciation. It doesn't take hundreds of thousands to millions of years to create new variations. No, they can come about quickly, which says in 4,500 years since the flood, if you have archetypes that are front-loaded with amazing amounts of pre-existing diversity, morphological variation, then these changes can come about quickly with the right environmental stimuli, the right environmental stressor. Recombination obviously can shuffle out pre-existing genes. And so, yeah, we're finding out today, 2023, that change can happen rapidly, consistent with the creation model.
Exactly. That's exactly true. Well said.
Donny, did you happen to see Dr. Rob Carter's presentation a day or two ago?
His video.
Yeah.
No, I want to watch it. It's on my checklist. He talks about this, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely. That's. I thought you brought this up because of that.
I did see he uploaded a video. Yeah, I definitely have to watch. I saw when this paper came out. But in 2017, I've been talking about since 2017, where they observed that new species of finch, confirmed prediction from Dr. Jensen, because Jensen said new species would come about through shifts in heterozygosity to homozygosity. That's the expectation given the created heterozygosity model. And so in 2017, they revealed a new species of finch had arisen through that same mechanism on a genomic level, confirmed prediction. And so now, go ahead, brother.
So Dr. Carter, in that, you'll find it really interesting because he basically elucidates a lot of details that you've kind of mentioned earlier. But one of them is in the speciation and how quick it happens. What he was talking about, basically, what it tells you that the mainstream evolutionary scientists, the dividing line for speciation, like okay, and now I'm going to give this this new population, a new species designation. The dividing line is just separation or isolation of reproductivity. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
And so what I'm saying is that's a false flag for macroevolution.
Notice also, I'm sorry,
because just because you've already pointed it out, that separation can happen very quickly, and in the creation model, people are always present with the animals on the planet. The animals can separate populations very quickly on their own, especially birds that can fly from island to island, but other animals do it as well. But as long as people have been here, how does the evolutionist know the difference between whether this population divided on its own or whether people did it intentionally to them?
Right. Good point.
The interesting, one of the most interesting things about all this is, of course, everything you guys are saying is absolutely true, and it's wonderful evidence of, as Donny puts it, the inbuilt genetic variability of the genius genetic information that the Creator put into our genomes of every living thing. The front-loaded is the term Donny likes to use a lot. Front-loaded genetic information that produces variability. But the interesting thing, I think, is that we notice that always that the evolutionist is extrapolating morphological change into anatomical change. They use the word evolution. They'll say, "Look, evolution, in only 30 years, new species of finch," and they'll claim this is evidence that supports evolution. But what are they pointing to? They're pointing to morphological difference, the very thing that Donny's talking about when he says front-loaded genetic information that produces variability, but nothing anatomically novel in the body plan. Remember, the evolution theory has to explain the arrival of the finch, not the variety of a finch, still being a finch with all finch features, nothing novel, nothing new in its anatomy. It doesn't have, it's still 100% a finch. You don't get birds to come into being by making a beak bigger.
Right.
Or
it's not evolving a stinger.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But that's exactly the kind of change evolution requires. If that doesn't happen, then evolution isn't true. But they're constantly doing this. They love to pump it out in the news media. Look, we see the evolution of this in only 25 or 50 years. What they're pointing to is nothing more than variation, morphological changes to colors, size, shapes, even sometimes patterns that don't support the arrival of any feature. And it can't be supported as evolution theory. One comment, if you don't mind. In 1980, some of the biggest evolutionary biologists in the world gathered at a conference rather, at the University of Chicago, and the title of that was, I can't remember. It was about what is the origin of the biological? Can microevolution be extrapolated to macroevolution? And the takeaway from that meeting was that no, you can't point to microevolutionary changes and say, look, we can show that macroevolution occurs because of microevolutionary changes. These guys were all evolutionists, and this was way back in 1980, and they all universally agreed that you can't point to microevolutionary change and say, look, that's proof that macroevolution is true. And that's what we're talking about now. You can't take a whole bunch of morphological changes and extrapolate that into the idea that anatomy changes so many times to bring all the features of birds into being from non-birds. See, that's the real thing. So the evolutionists are constantly there. It's a little disingenuous in a way to constantly point to morphology as evidence of anatomical change. But it's a card trick. It's a shell trick. You put the pea under the walnut shell in the middle and you shuffle them around real good. That's what it really amounts to, because they're using interchangeable ideas. They want you to hear, look, we can see morphological change, therefore the anatomical change is true, is what's going to happen in your mind, right? And you'll say, oh, evolution is true, duh. But that's not the truth, is it? That's not actually what they're doing. They're playing a card trick on you. They're pointing to morphological change and wanting you to believe that all this anatomical change has occurred and constantly occurs, but you can't take the morphological changes and turn them into anatomical ones.
Amen. It's why they struggle so hard. And we'll put the challenge out there right now. Moving into 2024, guys, we're continuing this open mic series, and it's really going to be a blessing if Neff continues to join too, because you're a powerhouse, Neff. This is awesome, brother. And so to any evolutionists out there, give us your best example of an anatomical change, not a change in morphology, not the sorting out of pre-existing allelic variability, no, true change in anatomy, like a scorpion stinger. That's a great example, Neff. And they struggle, don't they, T-Rock and Neff?
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, I was listening to AJ's argument about Tiktaalik. It's it's a very common go-to example for evolutionists to say that it's their prediction, so to speak, that validates their idea on how evolution happens. But what AJ misses and what they all miss, T-Jump did the exact same thing. They're basically, I don't know if you ever watched that debate I did with what was his name, Chris Tompkins?
Yeah, Chris Thompson.
You remember that? Thompson, yeah. Anyway, they did the same thing. There's a pattern. They're basically what they're calling predictions is really just following a pattern. And they're following a pattern of physical evidences. And we say all the time that the evolutionists don't have different evidence than we have. We all have the same evidence. And if they're just following a pattern of physical evidence, then we can essentially make the same prediction from the same evidence, if that's the way in which we're looking at it. But in the Tiktaalik example, the point there of the pattern is that Tiktaalik is supposed to be this transition from aquatic to land, or somewhere in that transitional line. I'll put it that way. But what does that mean? That means that in the real world, you find the aquatic animals in the water, you find the semi-aquatic animals near the coastline, right? And then you find the land animals further away from the coastline, right? So why wouldn't anybody expect to find something like Tiktaalik between a coastline and a body of water, or the fossils that lived in that place?
Yeah, we should find a creature, a fish with that morphology in that environment. That's exactly right. It's expected, but the evolutionists claim it's transitional. It just doesn't have the features of it. So that's a good point. And they point to the Cambrian creatures. They say, look, evolution and whatnot. But they'll say, what about the flood? Well, the flood can't be true because look, we got the Cambrian, and these are creatures and this and that and the other. But look, they were buried exactly where they live. That's why we find them where they are. They're in shallow seas right off the coast. That's where those kinds of creatures lived. That's where they got buried in the geologic column. It's not an argument against the flood.
Exactly
like Donny likes to put it, it's kind of agnostic to the debate, right? It's neither here nor there. It's just one of their banner proclamations to try and validate their theory, but it's actually agnostic at best.
Oh, it is, especially because you find true, like we were saying earlier, true tetrapods in terms of their foot tracks. Obviously, they existed prior to Tiktaalik, and so it fits our model of coexistence, intermingling, overlap. Right, rather than it has to be a transitional form. And you guys demonstrated many anatomical and morphological reasons why it's not a true transitional form.
I always like going to the example of the coelacanth, because the reason is because, like, if I'm not mistaken, this comes from the debate with Jackson Rowe. The coelacanth, the original one was found and alleged to be some 300 million years old, right?
Right.
And then fast forward, I think a matter of decades, and somebody found one that they assigned an age of like 60 million years. Well, okay, so in between there, we've also found living coelacanths, right? But for a long time, they thought the coelacanth was completely extinct. Well, what that tells me is that if you can find a living fossil that was allegedly evolved 300 million years ago, that means that you can't tell when they arrive or when they go extinct, either one, by strictly looking at the fossils.
Well, because your coelacanths right here on the geologic column representation, coelacanths you're saying are found in supposedly 300 million years worth of rock, right?
Right. What is that, Ordovician or something like that?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. So you got, so maybe around here, Ordovician, early bony fish. And so, but then you don't find them represented at all throughout the rest of the so-called rock record. But then we find them swimming around today. So they've actually coexisted with just about everything. So therapsids,
they have
synapsids, dinosaurs, mammals.
Right. Why is the geologic column littered with marine creatures? I mean, for crying out loud, fish account for 95.5% of the fossil record. I mean, so there's either two possibilities here: either the hadrosaur and the T-Rex and the Odontosaur and everything, they were all taking themselves a nice swim 50 miles off the coast when they got buried by, I don't know where the sediments could have come from out there, and buried them with the sea creature. Or maybe the ocean came onto the land and brought the sea creatures with it and buried them with all the hadrosaurs.
Right.
Kind of hard to figure out which one is plausible in it.
Well, and you nailed it, brother, because if you actually just look at the way they represent it, right? So they want to say the evolution of single-celled like ancestors up to mammals and higher mammals. When you actually just look at this representation, what do you have? It starts with marine creatures. You have marine creatures all the way through, and then eventually land creatures. And then
with marine creatures,
exactly. The marine creatures are mixed all the way through. And so the floods start, the fountains of the great deep break open. All of these marine creatures are tossed onto the continents. They're buried first. As the flood waters rise, you eventually get the land animals. They get buried. And that's exactly what we see in terms of the sequence of the so-called rock strata. I like to say, turn this horizontally rather than vertically. Turn it horizontally, and now you're looking at burial by communities and ecosystems. Exactly. You've got a Devonian community, you've got an Ordovician community, because you know what? Dinosaurs weren't necessarily living in the same communities as mammals or humans.
Let me ask you guys a question along this line. What do you guys think do you think it's logically valid to use the concept of index fossils as a means of gauging evolutionary progress?
No, circular reasoning. I can't quote him. I don't remember. I have his quote somewhere. A secular geologist once said that the intelligent layperson is quick to point out that dating fossils by rocks and rocks by fossils constitutes circular reasoning, and he was absolutely right about that. So it's just, you know, how it works, and when it works with their dating methods, it gets even worse. You know, it works like this. Hey, Bob, we got 3 different dates because it's a radiometric, right? They get a variety. They might get 5, 7 dates from the same rock. They don't just get one. They get a half a dozen, right? So, hey, Bob, how old did we think that rock is? Well, we got 5 different dates. Okay. When did that index fossil that we found in that strata, when did we think, you know, according to evolution theory, that existed? Well, that creature lived 250 million years ago, Fred. Oh, Fred. Okay. Which one of those dates is closest to 250 million years? Yeah, we got one that's 212 million. Is that the closest one? That's the closest one. Okay. Publish that one and throw the others away.
Right.
That's exactly how they do it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of make that point, though, to take that a little bit deeper. Circular reasoning, absolutely. But one of the things that that the evolutionists always fail to point out in the real world, this concept of index fossils. Now, I personally, I think it's an illegitimate logical argument to use index fossils to gauge evolution, and this is why. Because in today's biosphere, what you could conceivably call an index fossil is alive somewhere on the planet today. What that means is there are certain organisms that only live in certain places on the planet. And because that's true, if they get buried in some particular place and you don't know where they came from, you're going to call them an index fossil, even though they coexisted with everything else at the same time.
Yeah, good point,
Johnny,
brother. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question for you. I've been waiting so long, man.
Yeah, Romsky, great to have you. And I appreciate your questions, the text questions we were able to send to Count. Good job.
Okay. So my question, I actually have two questions, one from me and one from my younger brother. So the first question was, I quite didn't understand how Kent explained, because evolutionists, they always say that there's supposedly a genetic, there should have been a genetic, they always question how the sons of Noah began reproducing after they had exited the ark. If the genetic code had already started supposedly degrading, wouldn't they have had like kids that were deformed or with some kind of illnesses because they had sisters, they married their own sisters, and like how did that work exactly? How do I explain that to the evolutionist?
Let me make a quick point there, real quick. So I heard that conversation. I thought it was really interesting. The critic that put that issue forth, okay, genomic decay or mutation accumulation started happening after the fall. Therefore, what they're implying is that by the time Noah and his three sons and their wives get off the ark, inbreeding is already a problem, or it's also already a problem at the fall immediately upon the first couple generations from Adam and Eve. But here's my problem with what they're doing. They're literally jumping from mutation-free creation to more of a saturated level like what we have today without recognizing that it's actually a very slow process. So yes, Shem, Ham, Japheth, their three wives, they would have had mutations accumulated, but they would have been low frequency enough that it would not have been a problem.
Right.
On top of that, they're ignoring the fact that the dramatic change to the Earth's environment, the atmosphere of the Earth, it helped to weaken all organisms and make mutations becoming fixed in their genome easier. The evidence from that is not directly from genetics, but it's by inference based on the evidence, especially in the Bible. So the Earth's atmosphere lost 30 or 33% of its oxygen. That's provable by fossilized amber with bubbles in it. We know the Earth's environment had 30 to 33% more oxygen in the past. It likely had a higher atmospheric pressure too. Now you put an organism in a dramatically different environment like that, and you can see how that could accelerate the genetic decay of the organism. Wouldn't you agree with that, Donnie?
Absolutely. And I like to point out too, Romsky, think about this. According to the biblical model, we have what? We have three bottlenecks. We have one at creation, one at the flood, a couple thousand years later, and then one at Babel. Okay, Tower of Babel. Each bottleneck is short-lived. It's one generation followed by rapid and exponential population growth. And that would negate inbreeding effects right off the bat, even if there were a lot of mutations, because you have Adam and Eve, right away they start having kids. So it's a one generation bottleneck followed by rapid and exponential population growth. Then you get to the flood. The population's reduced to 8 people. Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their 3 wives. Okay. Again, one generation bottleneck followed by rapid and exponential population growth. Let's say 300 to 500 years later at the Tower of Babel. Okay. The languages are confused and then they spread out to all parts of the globe. And so we don't have any long-lasting bottleneck events like the evolutionary model. The evolutionary, they have the issue because in their out of Africa model, they have an extended bottleneck for thousands and thousands of years where the population's reduced to somewhere between 2 and 10,000 individuals. And they remain like that in that population size for thousands of years, inbreeding. all of these recessive deleterious mutations coming to the forefront over time, leading to disease and rapid genetic degeneration. And we're supposed to believe that highly degenerate population that experienced this near extinction event suddenly exploded into all parts of the globe and seized dominion over the planet, right? That's ridiculous. They're the ones with the issue. Go ahead, T-Rock.
I was gonna give Rumsky a biblical account that endorses exactly what Donnie just said, but puts a really fine point on it. So you know how when Abram was commanded to come out of the land of Canaan, so he took his half sister with him, right? And he ends up in this foreign land, and there's this king here, and the king. So Abram tells his wife, he says, "Tell them you're my sister."
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
So you got to think about that for a minute. That's a really telling clue here in what Donnie was describing in terms of short bottlenecks, because when he tells the king that this is my sister, what does the king assume? The king assumes that exactly what Abram wanted him to. He assumes that they can't be a married couple because they're siblings. That tells you that people intentionally got away from sibling marriages very early after the flood.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, hey, Donnie, here's an interesting point about the ark and the creatures and this, what we're talking about with populations. Something a lot of creationists overlook or don't really think about is if you ask Nathaniel Jeanson or any of the prominent creationist geneticists, how do you get a viable population that doesn't experience, problems with inbreeding and bottlenecks that can't be recovered from, but is by adding to the genome. You need more mitochondrial DNAs. You need more females, right? That's what I've heard Nathaniel Jeanson say on your channel, right? And he's right about that. So notice that the Bible says God told Noah to put, God brought to the ark 7 of each clean kind and only 2 of each unclean. So God placed higher priority on those creatures which were clean, would benefit man the most, and less on those that would not. Now, if you have 7 in a population to bring forth a whole population of those creatures, let's say you got 7 camels, you could have 3 males. Now you got 3 Y chromosomes in there, and you got 4 mitochondrials in there, 4 female mitochondria. That's going to create a starting base of genetic diversity that will help that population grow to become what it is today on this planet right off the ark.
Right. And I think that's a point that many people miss. So, Neff, because we were talking about this the other day. So what do you think the major reasons are for the 7 and the 2?
I think from what I can see is it's the priority that God placed on those kinds of organisms and how they would benefit the world in the future. Yeah. Like I say, if you start with 7, let's say you start with 2. That can be a problem. You've only got 2 genomes, right? You got a male and a female. Bringing forth could produce much more problem than 7 because you got 3 males and you've got 4 females, right? That's a lot of diversity. This guy can mate with that one and that one can mate with the other and everything back and forth, right? And they got a lot of genetic diversity in their genomes to start off with a bang, right? And the same thing was true on the ark. We've got Noah. You got how many men? 4 men and 4 women, right? Great genetic diversity right off the ark there, and so you've got a starting base there that's a lot better. If it had just been 2, might have been a problem. It wasn't in the beginning at creation, right, for man and woman, because there was no mutation in their genome, right? The information was completely uncorrupted, right?
Let me make a theological point about that difference between 2 and 7 sets. So a couple points to ponder is, one, the Bible says that 6 is the number of man. Well, how do you get 6 from 7? Well, when Noah stepped off the ark, he would have sacrificed 1 male of at least 1, possibly more of the clean animals. Now you're down to 6, right? And so you've got 6 males and 7 females. So that's theological point number 1. Point number 2 is in Noah doing this sacrifice, he's basically repeating what was learned by Adam and Eve from the fall about the sacrificing of clean animals specifically. And so whenever you fast forward to the time of Moses and the law is given, now sacrifices are done specifically for sin, right? You offer animal blood sacrifices only in the event that sin needs to be atoned for in some way. So now the genetic relevance there is that every time you sacrificed a heifer, it had to be genetically perfect. And every time you did, you were taking that genetically perfect organism out of the population, and you're left with an inferior genome population. You see what I'm saying? You're deteriorating it. Sin is literally deteriorating the genome of your herd animals that you have to sacrifice by reason of always having to kill the ones with the best and the fewest mutations.
And I can see that as a plausible explanation. I don't know that that's actually the case, but it certainly is something to consider. I think it's plausible.
A lot of things evolutionists don't understand, and I've got a lot of notes actually from my last discussion with Mr. Anderson on fixation equilibrium. So I'm ready to discuss at some point in the future with these evolutionists the finer details of genetic entropy, because they just keep coming up. They see what the evolutionists do. Now, if you know this, once they're refuted, once their rescue devices are demolished, they go back to the drawing board and they try and come up with something new rather than topping out and admitting, okay, I'm not related to a strawberry.
Absolutely. Kind of thing. Yeah, move the goalpost as fast as possible.
Right. Yeah. So, but what they forget, mutation accumulation is a problem for those that believe in deep time evolution, because it puts shelf lives on genomes. It tells us that animals could not have been evolving for hundreds of thousands to millions of years because deleterious mutations are pouring in far too quickly. But for creationists, we only have 4,500 years since the flood. So it's not as large of an issue for us, because we understand that no, this puts shelf lives on the age of biology and biological organism. So yes, mutations are introduced after the fall. 2,000 years, you have a pristine genome. We have genomes of 6 billion letters, 3 billion from mom, 3 billion from dad. Okay. And then from the flood, you have 4,500 years. So at Noah, yes, mutations have accumulated, but not enough for there to be really serious inbreeding related problems, because inbreeding reveals the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes. Mm-hmm. In the evolutionary model, they explain the origin of all genetic variation as being the result of what? Genetic mistakes over time. But we believe that most of the variability found in genomes is what? Designed and created, with the bad diversity, I guess you could say, being the result of mutations that have been introduced since creation. Go ahead,
Donny. I think one of the best points you've made so far, one of the really good points you've made so far, is about the difference in the duration of the bottlenecks in the creation versus the evolution scenario. And I think a way to kind of put a good perspective on it is to say that short-lived, very short-lived, very tight bottlenecks are less damaging than long extended bottlenecks, even in larger populations.
Absolutely.
Another issue is that the evolutionists like to point to things like Down syndrome and say, see, this is what your creationist model should have made. Well, the problem with that is that to create something like that, both the parents, both the mom and the dad, have to have the same mutation in the same loci in the genome for that offspring to have that issue.
That's not a good argument anyway, because
they both have to have it. So if both don't have it, you're not gonna. It's not like man right off the ark is all gonna become Down syndrome people, right?
Right. Well, it's a bad argument anyway, because Down syndrome is typically associated with women that are too far in age, and doesn't necessarily tie directly to specific mutations.
Yeah, but we do see, I think, an example of a variety of mankind that did experience genetic entropy too much, and that's why they're not here with us. And we all know them as Neanderthal is likely a genetically defunct variety of man that came about after the fall. After the Tower of Babel affair, and he was the unfortunate breed, if you want to call him breed of man, that the example that of what can happen and did happen was the Neanderthals. They had an odd looking rib cage. They were physiologically a deformed people, and they managed to survive for a few thousand years after the flood anyway, but now they're gone. And that's because they didn't have, for one reason or another, we don't know exactly why, they didn't have the genetic viability coming out of the Tower of Babel affair that most of the other populations of man. And look, there are some really weird varieties of mankind. In Africa, there's a tribe of human beings where everybody in the whole tribe is less than 4 feet tall. Everybody. And there's one like that in Asia too. So, these legends of Menahunis the Hawaiians have and leprechauns and all, people say, oh, there's no truth in that. Well, I don't believe that leprechauns had a pot of gold and at the end of a rainbow and all that. But are these legends distortions because man knew that after the Tower of Babel affair, there were minute, diminutive varieties of man after? Absolutely plausible.
And we find examples of this, like Homo floresiensis, Hobbit, because of its
exactly
diminutive size, right? Luzonensis is another one. Naledi, got a whole presentation on Naledi.
Homo erectus, for all we know.
Right. And so Neanderthal, they've discovered, was the most inbred people group on the planet. Their runs of homozygosity, they just have these massive stretches of identical letters. And that's what you're going to get with inbreeding over long periods of time, isolation. And they're 40% less fit than modern humans, but at the same time, they were superior than us in many ways too. Their eyesight, they were extremely robust, muscular, bigger brains. Yeah, because they were closer to the flood. So basically, they were a people group that in many ways were superior to us because they're closer to the flood. But after the Tower of Babel dispersal, as you said, Neff, you're completely right. They became isolated across Eurasia, and the cold glacial environment resulted in a lot of stress. Inbreeding, mutations come into the forefront. But notice this. This is Chris Stringer. He's a professor in paleoanthropology, if I'm not mistaken. He's not a young earth creationist. And he's pointed out that isolation can result in some really interesting, what he calls evolutionary experiments, where you basically get these primitive features. You get reductive evolution, right? Small brain size, small body size, like you see in Hobbit. And so I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, Neff, that after Babel, these people groups spread out. Some get isolated on islands, like the island of Luzon and Flores. And what happens is reductive evolution, these anomalous features. And the evolutionists want to say that these features make them primitive, or they're basal, they're pre-human. No, they're fully human, but these are humans that became isolated, inbred, and genetically degenerate, unfortunately. So you nailed it, Neff.
Yeah.
Hey, if you guys don't mind, this is a wonderful discussion, and I've got to admit, I'm fascinated by your placing these things around the flood and stuff. I do too. It's a common belief. I'm glad we all share. But I've got an interesting proposal here to present to you guys really quick. That
sure.
I believe that we've had a slam dunk against evolution for a decade, and we've failed to use it because it's hidden, and we haven't looked into the numbers. We haven't done the math, if I could put it that way. And to put it in a nutshell, it's this. The soft tissue that we find in dinosaur bones, the studies that I've done on this, there's massive evidence, not just one or two skeletons, but massive amounts of dinosaurs and all of these fossils now have soft tissue. We know this now. Just recently, 300 million year old, supposedly ichthyosaur, soft tissue, 300 million years old. Now, our slam dunk against evolution is this. We have the math that teaches us that can't last this long. And it's already been tested and proven.
Yeah.
And what we have the works from a roll of iron and excuse me, this was Mary Schweitzer's paper, and the role of iron and oxygen chemistry in preserving soft tissues, cells, and molecules from deep time. Now, if you go down and you read first in the abstract, you'll see an admission that this is no new thing, and they've been finding soft tissue in these bones, they know, for the last, ever since the 1960s. Now, if that's true, and I see no reason why it's not, that means that this has been kept from us for half a decade. And why would they keep that from us for half a decade and the news not just come out until like 2005 or so? But then we have the mathematics here. They actually did the testing to try to see. The first thing that happened was people were ridiculing Ms. Schweitzer and her boss, Horner. Jack Horner was like the predominant paleontologist at the time, and she worked for him. And he was under fire as an atheist and an evolutionist. Young tissue, they're asking, impossible. And so the first papers they began to write was proving that this really was soft tissue. They were accused of it was biofilm. They were accused of not knowing the difference between soft tissues, biological tissues, and biofilm. They found blood vessels, cells, all kinds of stuff. But at any rate, the first thing they did was test it repeatedly to make sure that's what it was. And this is how Mary Schweitzer earned her PhD, as a matter of fact, by proving that, yes, this is indeed soft tissue. They said this can't even last 1 million years old, but there it is. Now, if you look at her test, then she did test to see how long these things can be preserved, various proteins. And she used the hemoglobin of an ostrich to try to see how long they were able to preserve the stability. And they were able to increase the stability by 200-fold. Now, everybody knows how half-lives work. We have actual numbers to work with here then. Now, bear with me for just 1 minute. I'm almost done. So if you take the half-life of collagen, for instance, collagen was one of the things they found. Now, there's different types of collagen. Let's avoid the blood collagen. That's only got a half-life of 60 or 70 days. Let's avoid the skin collagen with only a half-life of 15 years. Let's go to the collagen they find in cartilage to give it the longest possible 117-year half-life. So after 10 half-lives, we know there should be basically nothing there to work with. That's why we only carbon date things up to 50 or 60,000 years old. But so if you take the 117-year half-life of collagen and you multiply that by 10, the 10 half-lives, you get 1,170 years that could have possibly been found in that bone. From that point, you shouldn't be able to find much of anything at all after that. But that's not what we get. Now, if we multiply that by her 200-fold, she was able to give it an increase of 200-fold stability. Multiply 1,117 years, because that's what it is. That's 10 lifetimes, 10 half-lives of 117 years. So you multiply that by 200-fold, you've only got 234,000 years. So the oldest these bones could possibly be, according to their own mathematics, by their own experiments, the oldest those bones could possibly be would be 234,000 years old, not even 250,000 years old. You need not a 200-fold increase, you need a 55,500-fold increase to get to the 65 million years they want to get to.
Right. It limits the age of the Earth. It limits the age of dinosaurs. They certainly can't go back 65 million years.
Yes. Now you see that right there. Now let's talk about how that comes into play here. Let's talk about a common ancestor between the chimp and the human. How are we going to evolve the chimp and the human in 234,000 years? That's not going to happen.
Impossible.
How about the Pakicetus to the whale in 234,000 years old? Not going to happen. Now, it gets even more damning because I can show you the papers for this too. After they found the soft tissues, and this is just a short story, guys, I'll be done. After they found the soft tissues, they did the next logical thing. A bunch of people that didn't believe in evolution took dinosaur bones from various different dinosaurs and various different museums and various different digs and sent them to 3 different labs. And every one of those labs, there were scores of samples sent. Every single one of those samples, every single one came back between 9 and 49,000 years old. Carbon-14 dating after the fact. So they were going to present this in this big lecture thing. There was this huge to-do on evolution, and there were a lot of people gathered, and they were going to present this. And when it came time to present them, they wouldn't let them present it. And some dude stood up and says, well, obviously this can't be. All of these samples were contaminated. And they wouldn't let them produce their results. They wouldn't let them present these results before all the people that were gathered there. But you can still find these papers. You can still find all of this. And as a result, you can also find all the papers on the other side that are trying to explain why we're finding C14 in every single dinosaur bone that we have tested. And Jack Horner was offered $20,000 to test that bone for carbon-14 that they found the soft tissue in. Mary Schweitzer found. He turned it down. And it's on tape why he turned it down. Because the spin, quote unquote, the spin that Christians will get from this won't do us any favors. There you go, guys. There's my slam dunk.
Well said. I believe that is one of the many slam dunks for sure.
There you go.
But yeah. Neff, any thoughts, brother, as we start to wind things down here?
The carbon-14 thing is a little interesting. I debated Dr. Dan Larhammer. He's a geneticist at the University of Uppsala in Sweden about evolution about 5 years ago, six years ago. And I mentioned carbon-14 found in dinosaur bones, and he said, well, I mean, you have to be able to show that the carbon-14 didn't get, it wasn't intrusive. It didn't get added to the bones by, rainwater passing through the geologic column. And you know what? I have to admit, he stumped me a little bit when he said that, because I thought to myself, you know what? That's a plausible explanation. How do you eliminate water putting the carbon-14 into the bones over time? If they became a fossil, after all, then fossilization requires the input of water with the correct minerals. Couldn't it have brought the carbon-14 with it? So I'm not so sure that the carbon-14 thing is a great argument against creation. However, what this does show, though, is that the bones can't be millions of years old, though. It still shows that. That's the thing.
What about diamonds, though? I just want to ask Neff a question. Would that same argument work against diamonds? Because aren't they resistant to any kind of outside or external contamination?
Yeah, diamonds is a whole other thing. Diamonds are carbon-12, which is a bigger atom than carbon-14. And carbon-14 cannot get in, because in a diamond, every molecule of carbon, rather, is bound to 4 others in every direction. One above it to the left, to the right, one below it to the left, to the right, one behind it to the left and right, and one below it in the back to the left and right. It's locked. Each one of them. This is what makes diamonds so strong. It's in a matrix where they're in this geometric arrangement. And they're all locked and bound to each other. So it's not just one of them isn't bound to 1 or 2 others. Each one is bound to 4 others in every direction around itself. So if you try pulling on one, the other guys all say, no, you're not going anywhere. I got you over here. Oh, and I got you over here too. And I'm down here below you, and I got you too. See, so that's what makes diamonds so strong. So because of this matrix, and because carbon-14 is bigger than carbon-12, you can't get carbon-14 into a diamond. Any carbon-14 14 that's in a diamond had to be part of the material that was formed into a diamond by the geologic process. Now, here's the killer thing about that. That proves that the geological processes that created that diamond happened less time ago than it takes for the carbon-14 to have all decayed out of the diamond.
Right.
In other words, the catastrophic geological forces in the crust of the Earth by plate tectonics, that was a product of the flood, and it only occurred thousands of years ago, because you can't get the carbon-14 the carbon-14 would have decayed if the flood of Noah took place 10,000 years ago. There wouldn't be this carbon-14, or 20,000 years ago, no carbon-14 would be in the diamond. See, but because the carbon-14 is still there, this proves the geological processes. The uniformitarianist idea of geology is false.
Amen.
Because the catastrophic geological forces in the Earth that may squeeze that material, made it into a diamond, happened only thousands of years ago, because carbon-14 is still in the diamond. See.
You know, before we wrap up, there is something I would offer as an argument against his question about C14 seeping in and out. If you're going to accept that's true in every case here, because if we look at the dozens and dozens and dozens of samples that have all come back with carbon-14 in these dinosaur bones. If you're going to damn them all with that line, then you've got to say the entire radiometric system is unreliable, because there's nothing guaranteeing that anything will not leach in or leach out of any particular sample of rock. So they're damning their own radiometric system by doing this. They're saying our system is unreliable. So if they want to say that's unreliable, we can't trust any of it.
Well, here's the thing. I want to make this point because so many great points. If carbon decays so quickly that, let's say, every single atom in the universe was made of carbon, it would all decay within, let's say, 500,000 years. Give them 1,000,000 years. Who cares? Diamonds are supposedly billions of years old. They're found deep within the Earth. They're resistant to contamination. They're shielded from cosmic ray bombardment in the atmosphere. And yet we find not just trace amounts, because I've heard a lot of evolutionists say, oh, well, it's just trace amounts. No, we find high amounts above a normal detectable limit. And Dr. Andrew Snelling, he pointed out that these results were actually confirmed by scientists in the conventional literature using their own radiocarbon lab. And they used 8 diamonds, and they yielded radiocarbon ages of just thousands of years old. Should not be the case if these are billions of years old.
Exactly. The diamond can't be a 1.1 billion years old or whatever. It's impossible. It's still got the carbon-14 in it. That's right. Doctor, you're right. Like, if there was a ball of carbon-14, the mass of the Earth, it would all be gone in 1 million years. Right. That's how fast it decays. 5,760 or so years, give or take a decade or two, is the half-life of carbon-14. So this proves the geology of the flood took place only thousands of years ago. The age of the Earth is as billions of years old is a scientifically invalid idea, and so many things from carbon-14 and diamonds. It blows everything that evolutionists believes completely away. All of it, it's gone.
Right. And these are preclusionary data points. They're not agnostic. Evolutionists love to focus on agnostic lines of evidence, homology, right? Nested hierarchies, interesting mosaics, whatever. These are data points that only the young Earth creationist model can explain. C14 in diamonds, dinosaur soft tissue, genetic degeneration with the accumulation of low impact slightly deleterious mutations. That puts shelf lives on genomes. If species cannot persist for millions of years into the future because of mutation accumulation, they could not have persisted for millions of years from the past. It's just not possible. It demonstrates that biology is young, and guess what? Biology is reflected all throughout the rock strata. Isn't that right, Neff? Going back 500 million years to 1 billion years. But since biology is young, as we know today, because of mutation accumulation, that means that the fossils
The
that
geologic
are
column.
dead biological organisms that are found all throughout the so-called geologic column. That means the geologic column is also
Awesome.
young.
Awesome point. That's another exactly. See, it's a great example, Donnie. That's exactly another thing. The very existence of that it just blows their whole uniformitarianist ideas about the age of strata in the Earth, the geologic column. It's all blown out of the water by this. It's blown out of the water by the carbon-14 in diamonds. Uniformitarianism is just as much a myth as evolutionism. They go hand in hand. You got to have the millions of years for the life to have evolved. You can't have the life evolving without millions of years. They're linked to each other and they're necessary, one for the other, right? And
Yes.
they're both false.
They're linked, right? Yeah. And because a lot of evolutionists will say, well, how does genetic entropy, which demonstrates biology is young, how does that demonstrate that the Earth is young? Because you find biology all throughout the Earth rock strata.
Exactly.
By definition, they're linked, and so it all has to be young.
Absolutely.
Genetics demonstrates a young Earth.
Exactly. That's a great point, Donnie. That's a great point. It sure does. It just ruins their whole game. It's all over with.
Right. They hope, dream, and imagine, don't they, brothers?
Man, it's called fantasy of the highest order.
Right. It's a religion of imagination. So, gentlemen, this has been a great show. Neff, you sound great. You're at the top of your game. What a blessing to have you back. Lionheart, I appreciate you joining as well. Great arguments on dinosaur soft tissue. This has actually been session 9 of our Defending Genesis conference. And so we did want to get at least one open mic in there just to challenge the critics, allow them to join and engage us. So we will be doing more of these open mics for 2023, about to end. We did evolution debate challenge open mic roughly every 2 weeks. And so we did a ton of these, hours and hours worth of content. So Neff, I hope you can join us more for sure in the future. Again, excellent job tonight. To the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Kent was with us for the first 2 hours, and then we just did 2 hours of free-for-all open mic. And as usual, time has flown by. It's been a lot of fun. Neff, Eric, any final words, final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap it up? Neff, let's start with you.
I just want to say I'm so glad that you're doing what you do on the internet. That you're really a force to reckon with. What you've done with your channel is just wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. You've the guys that came before you and built up apologetics on the internet, and then comes Donnie and takes it to another level. So we're glad. We're really blessed to have you doing what you do, brother.
Well, I appreciate those kind words, brother. Praise the Lord. Neff, you know, you and I, we've been going at this together for the last 5 years, but I knew you even before that because I listened to your debates, watched you engage the critics back in the Google Hangouts days. So times have changed. Lots of good times, brother. Wow. We could talk about the debates and open mics we've done over the last 5 years for hours. So God bless you, Neff. You got great reward, my man. I appreciate it. Eric Jewell, appreciate you being here as well. Great arguments with the dinosaur soft tissue. Definitely a fatal blow. I completely agree. Any final words, final thoughts?
I just want to thank you, brother, for even allowing me up here and allowing me to speak. Thank you for that time. And I want to thank you, too, for what you do here. We don't have enough people meeting this thing head on, and I'm thankful for all of you guys. I really enjoyed listening to all of the arguments and all of everything that was brought forth. And I hope that sometime down the road, maybe I can become a part of some of these debates. I would really enjoy that. I would love that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. That's all I want to say. And God bless everybody here. I love you all, man. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
God bless. Awesome. Great final words, Eric. Hopefully you can join us in the future as well. You know, the audience knows we're doing frequent open mics and not even always on Creation Evolution. Sometimes a little soteriology will get in there. So feel free to join that one as well, especially you too, Neff. So, okay, gentlemen, excellent show. I had a lot of fun with this. To the audience, this was session 9 of our 2023 Defending Genesis conference. We have one more session to go, that being 10 sessions. We're wrapping things up as we move into December for a solid. We want to end the year with a bang. So we do have some interesting debates for you in December. So with that, God bless. Standing for Truth is out.